of soul.
This is Bass Talk Live. Your host, Mark Jeffries and Matt Pangrack. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Lose, Strike King Lures, Bass Cat Boats, Ducket Fishing, Spro, AFCO, Big Bite Baits, Sunline, and TH Marine. BTL coming at you. Good Wednesday, everybody. Welcome once again to BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk bass fishing and anything else that we want to talk about. Matthew, how you doing on a Wednesday?
I'm doing great. I spent all day editing video.
That's good thing.
Yesterday.
That's busy stuff. That's good for you.
So we'll have a new video out on the BTL channel, hopefully today. It's about a 25-minute long one. It's some stuff I've never done before. I actually go through some. I don't go like on the water, like, hey, here's how to catch fish, because obviously there's a lot of times that I don't catch fish.
Yeah.
It's the enjoyment of getting to watch the cluster that is my day, but I go through some like bait storage and stuff like that beforehand. Yeah. So there's even Shaggy the Bull makes an appearance in it.
Who?
Shaggy the Bull.
You have a bull.
The girlfriend's stepdad out at the farm has a bull named Shaggy, and he's temperamental.
Okay.
So he kind of...
Bulls typically are.
Kind of charge the fence a little bit.
Do you ever go out there in a red hoodie?
No. I avoid Shaggy at all costs.
Really? How old is it?
I don't know. He's
big bull?
He's in his prime. I can tell you that. No, there's no horns.
No horns?
They're off. But I mean, you look out in the field and they've got the little, the Dexters are the tiny ones, I think. They got the Dexters, and then they got this bull. He stands out like a sore thumb. It's like when you're going down the bank and you've got buck, and then you see like an 8-pounder on the bed. You're like, that's the one right there.
What was his name again?
Shaggy.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. Hey, great show today, folks. We're going to have Chris Zaldain in studio. This was arranged a little while ago.
Yep.
I think like last week is when I booked it. Chris had some stuff that he's taking care of here in Oklahoma. So I thought it was cool that he would be able to be in studio today, show us some baits, show us some stuff, answer questions.
And stay 6 feet away from both of us.
Yeah. That's how we roll.
Yep.
All right. So we will get to Chris here in about 10 minutes. A couple of things, man. The announcement came down yesterday, the postponement, Santee Cooper and 4 other events that came down for bass. I mean, we knew that was coming, especially with the mandate that President Trump threw out about carrying it through April 30th or 31st or whatever.
Now, they have not canceled the next 2 opens as of yet, which I believe are on Cherokee and Neely Henry. Actually keeping in good communication with those anglers. I would be shocked if either of those happened. But as of now, I guess those would be the next dominoes to fall.
Yeah.
In the fishing world.
Yeah, it's really, really going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out. We talked about it yesterday, the logistics of trying to get everything rescheduled. I don't know, man. It's going to be a challenge for everybody involved, and we'll see.
How do they work on, so they spend this year, so let me ask you this. This is something that just popped into my head, Mark.
Yeah.
So obviously, what are these people doing this year? They're working on next year's schedule. Well, everyone who's working should typically have been working on next year's schedule, the 2021 schedule. I have a feeling that is the furthest thing from the scheduler's mind right now.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to figure out if, when, how to get the rest of 2020 in.
Yeah.
And then you have to work on the 2021 schedule, and this thing obviously is going to go into the summer. So
I know Chris listens to the show. I don't know if he listened to the show where I've been throwing out my idea, the concept.
I've been throwing out all sorts of ideas.
Rolling out with the remainder of the season and what to do for the remainder, at least on the bass side, for the remainder of the season. We'll get his take on my concept and idea when he gets on here in a few minutes. But it is a massive, massive challenge. Now, interesting story in USA Today today.
Don't even ask. I didn't read it.
It wasn't bass fishing, but it was directed toward fishing in general. It was a commentary piece, an opinion piece, and I don't remember the guy's name. He discussed how fishing was thriving during the coronavirus situation. And they interviewed a couple of people that was directed towards catfishing.
Because it's one of the few things you can do that complies with everything.
That was one of the points that he made. And this guy owned a tackle shop. I don't remember where it was. It was in like, I think it was Tennessee.
Selling a lot of dough bait and
He said it
Carolina
is
rig
jam-packed.
weights.
He has to limit the number of people going into the tackle store. He has a part-time employee that stands outside and monitors
how many people are in there buying stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting. So the other thing that came to my mind then is, how many hours of programming does the BPT have in MLF? I mean, each show is like a ridiculous number of hours of programming, right?
Yeah.
So if they don't have several of those stages filled with all those hours of programming,
they're showing a lot of selects, I guess. I don't know.
The selects don't exist anymore. They were on. Those are reruns. Do you just start rerunning stuff on all those hours, or do you turn?
You have to.
Do you turn a tournament that typically would have been whatever X number of hours and then double it? So then the final day, instead of being one show, is spread out over 2 or 3 shows with all the footage that they have?
I don't know.
Because you're having to shuffle and make up literally like 100+ hours. You know, Bassmasters, it's like an hour-long show.
Yeah.
Right?
I have an idea. I was thinking about this over the last couple of days, tied into some of the stuff that some of the other sports are doing. I have an idea. I'm not going to throw it out there yet.
Okay.
Because every time I throw an idea out there, what happens?
It either you get yelled at.
No.
You get in trouble. People,
they either like it or they hate it.
Yeah.
All right. And then eventually somebody picks up on it and they run with it.
Yeah.
All right. So that's not going to happen. All right. Last night, a big night for me because there was I call it a documovie, not a documentary. It was more of a documovie launch last night on HBO. I haven't talked about this on the show before, but if you are a basketball fan tied in to crime and FBI investigations, you have to watch this.
Yeah, yeah.
It was unbelievable. I was texting. Do you know who Mark Rogers is?
Name sounds familiar.
TV, radio personality, sports guy on the Sports Animal.
Did you just name drop a local sports celebrity?
He's a real good friend of mine.
Okay.
Dude. We used to be neighbors when we lived in the neighborhood before we lived in Noble.
Yeah.
I mean, we were neighbors for a long time.
Anyway, so you're talking about the Tim Donaghy documentary about the gambling on the basketball, the referee?
No.
No? What are you talking about then?
No. Christian Dawkins. Do you know that name?
No clue.
You're kidding me. Rick Pitino?
Yeah.
Sean Miller?
Yeah.
You know, the whole FBI investigation.
Oh, with Louisville?
Yeah.
There's already a docu-series on it?
This was Christian Dawkins. This was the guy that was right in the middle of the whole thing.
Interesting.
All right, but the cool thing about this, and I know it's not fishing related, but listen, they actually had the wiretap phone tapes of all the conversations that Christian Dawkins had with Sean Miller, the head coach at Arizona, and golly, what is the guy's names? Will Wade at LSU. And then they would show these guys press conferences where they admitted in front of the world that they never did business anyway with Christian Dawkins.
But they had the wire.
Oh my gosh! How do these guys still have a job?
I'll have to check that out. I'm still on my 5th viewing of the Tiger King. So
Dude,
once I get tired of that, I will
absolutely just
move
outraged
on to college basketball.
These guys
scandals.
still have jobs. They're making millions of dollars, and they freaking lied. Cool. And it showed in this documentary. The name of the docu-movie is called The Scheme.
The Scheme.
The Scheme, and it's on HBO. It is unreal, dude. You thought if you love basketball and you love sports and you love this whole investigation, oh, it is so cool how they busted Dawkins.
It does sound interesting. Now, can we get back to the fishing and give some stuff away?
Yes. Did you tell that upset me a little bit? It really
yes, you
did,
got
man.
Fired up. I'm glad it got your mind off of things that are going on, and I'm interested in it, and I'll watch it. But so we did the Sunline Hotline show last week,
Yeah.
And Mark and I both, I was giving something away based on your best kind of disaster boating story, your sketchiest, something crazy that happened on that. And you, what were you giving? So, your best lure, the best lure hack, tinker or anything. Yeah. So, it didn't take long. My winner was Daniel from Tennessee. He was the first caller that we had. Remember what Daniel did? Daniel was going night fishing, so he went out the day, pre-practiced, all that stuff, was smoking them, didn't check to see that the lake had dropped, so they go put in at night to go fishing, and the lake had dropped, and there was a sandbar completely around the ramp, but it was dark, so they couldn't see it, so they launched the boat, get ready to go fishing, and they can't figure out why they can't get to the lake. It's because they launched in like a tiny little pond that was surrounding the ramp, and that was the only water that was in there.
Yeah.
So they couldn't figure out how to get in. They got stuck on a sandbar. So Daniel from Tennessee, if that was your story, send me an email, Matt, M-A-T-T, @basszone.com with your mailing address, and I will shoot you a spool of the Sunline X Plasma Saga and 10-pound test. It's good stuff for, perhaps you like to crappie fish. I don't know if you've noticed, that just seems to be a trend right now in the world of professional fishing. Mark Daniels Jr., Jason Christie posted crappie pictures. Everyone's posting crappie. Russ Lane posted crappie pictures. So, but it's also great for your backing on a spinning reel. For shaky head, net rig, whatever your selected finesse tactic is. So who do you got?
Mine is Keith in Kentucky. He had the modifications of the Shad Rap. You remember that?
No, because that was one of the calls that you hadn't figured out the three-way yet, Mark.
That was Keith in Kentucky.
Modifies the Shad Rap.
Yeah, you don't remember that?
No, because remember there were calls that I missed because you hadn't figured out the three-way call.
That's right. So Keith in Kentucky, send me an email with your mailing address. I got the stuff sitting right here. I will get you taken care of. Mark@basszone.com. All right, got that out of the way. What else, man?
Man, that's about all I got. I'm kind of depressed. It just keeps raining and overcast here, and I just want to go sight fishing so bad.
Yeah.
And I can't see them anywhere. Oh, I do have news.
What's that?
Hallman called me yesterday. You know the bait that we're working on with Big Bite?
Yeah.
He got the samples in. He got the prototypes in.
Very nice.
And he was super pumped about it. So I think he actually got like a 25 count bag of it because they have to like make them one at a time.
Yeah.
So he's got to go out and test it and stuff. We actually, next week, is he going to be in studio to talk about it?
Yeah,
but he called me. The samples finally came in. He got his hands on it, and he's super pumped to go out and give that a shot. So I'm hoping that somehow, without a lot of contact, I can get a handful of those things and go out there this week and see what it's all about.
Very cool.
Looks cool. Send me some pictures. He said it looks legit. So more on that coming next week.
Yeah, the listeners are going to get very involved with that too, right?
Very involved. You might have a chance to win a lot of free baits.
Yeah.
Design a color with the name.
Very cool.
That's all coming down the pipeline in the next month and a half. So.
All right. I know everybody's fired up about the big show tomorrow. Do I need to mention that again? Nah, I'll talk about it later.
I know one person who shouldn't be fired up about it.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Jeez.
You gotta face what is that? You gotta face the piper? You gotta pied the piper?
The piper.
What is that? What's the saying there? You have to, the Pied Piper's facing you?
I don't know.
How do I always screw this up right before we go to break? What is it? What is the saying?
Dude, I don't know.
It's like you have to face like if you were not wanting to face someone and then you had to face them, and then it's like a saying where someone says, it's time to face it's time to pay the piper. Chris Zaldain off camera coming up with it. It's time to pay the piper tomorrow, Mark.
All right, we'll see. We'll talk about that later. All right, everybody, stay tuned on a Wednesday.
The ultimate fishing system starts with Lowrance HDS Live. Upgrade to HDS Live with a Ghost trolling motor, live sight transducer, or Structure Scan 3D, and get up to $500 cash back.
Yeah, You care about gear ratios, inches per turn, and ball bearings, but most importantly, you want reliability and dependability in the equipment you use. Lew's doesn't cut corners when it comes to the gear they build. The new Speed Spool LFS is the best $99 reel in the market. Go see for yourself.
We've paired one of the most iconic hulls in the history of bass boats with a proven lineup of trusted accessories. We're bringing you best-in-class value and performance, leaving others in your wake. Turnkey value, turnkey performance. The Pantera 2 is an overachiever in the 19-foot category. Once you hit the throttle, you'll feel the rush, and there's no looking back.
Kevin, what are you doing here?
Oh, I'm just filling in for Billy.
I need a 660 shad crankbaits in the Series 5 model.
We're out.
You're not out. You got all kinds of them right there.
We're out.
Kevin, I need 6.
Have a lollipop.
I do not want a lollipop.
Have a lollipop.
Do you have it in sexy shad color?
At Duckett Fishing, we have assembled the top pros in the country to help us design rods to give you a competitive advantage. Castability, strength, durability, action, sensitivity, weight and balance, and consistency. Combine that with the best warranty in the industry, and you have rods that are pro-driven.
Duckett Fishing, pro-driven.
I want to share to you a new product we got coming out from Sunline. This is the FC leader size spools that we have now. We've gotten a lot of requests for this. A lot of you guys use fluorocarbon for leaders only, myself included. And one of the problems you have is when you have a 200-yard spool, that might last you 2, 3, 4 years. You might even lose it before you even get done with the spool. So we've gone to a little smaller spool. These are 50-yard spool sizes. You know, that way you're not holding your line on forever. You can keep your line fresh, use it when you can, stores real easily in the boat. We got all of our popular line sizes that you're used to with our Sniper from 5 to 14 pound. If you guys are looking for a line that you're only tying for a leader, go check out Sunline FC Leader 100% fluorocarbon and give it a try.
All right, we are back on a Wednesday, and want to welcome our in-studio guest, Mr. Chris Zaldain. Chris, great to have you again, man.
Hey, man, love being on this show. Absolutely love it.
Well, we're fortunate because you had some stuff you were going to take care of here in Oklahoma City. It all worked out to where you can come by the studio. But, man, it's got to be a very challenging time for all you guys out there on the Elite Series.
Oh, man, just getting out of the house, you know, is a nice little break for myself. And Trait, you know, she's going, heck, we've been pretty much on lockdown for the last week or so. We just bought a new house, so that's kind of neat. We moved in and everything, so it was somewhat welcoming this time off. But, dude, we just looked at it. We're like 8 weeks out, 9 weeks out till our next tournament. So, I mean, we've got a lot of time on our hands.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about some of the stuff you got going on. How much time have you spent on the water?
Dude, a lot. Yeah, a lot. You know, in between the moving in and settling in, I take trips out to East Texas out there and Fish Fork and some of those other lakes and just kind of experimenting around. And now with the announcement of our next tournament being canceled, Santee Cooper, you know, I want to build more videos. You see Matthew doing it. You know, Trait and I really want to build more YouTube videos, not only how-tos, but just a bunch of big fish caught in northwest Texas. So we're stay tuned for that. We got a lot coming.
All right, very cool. You mentioned it when before the show started. We were talking about how the big networks are really struggling with trying to get this remote access video stuff. YouTube, all the other content being thrown out there. And some of the people in the fishing world have been doing this way before the big networks. So
yeah, absolutely. BTL has been around a long time. Trey and I have been big fans for a long time. I know you've helped other shows, Ike Live and such. And I was listening to Howard Stern, Sirius XM on the way over here, and they were talking about the Foxes, the CNNs. They're all having to live stream from the host basements, and how they were having trouble with the logistics of microphones and live streams and callers that call in, and that's something you've been dealing with for years and years and years, and you've perfected. So it's really awkward seeing those big networks like that struggling with studio operations. So it's
well, I know the fans are fired up. 2 swim bait shows in a row.
Yeah.
Glide baits, whatever you want to call it. I got ripped for saying that yesterday, Matthew. Glide bait, swim bait.
Zaldain throws one that wiggles more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Carl throws one that glides more.
Yeah.
It's like basically.
There's a huge difference.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to say it's the difference between baseball and softball.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying it's the same thing. It looks familiar, but just because you're really good at baseball doesn't mean you're good at softball, and vice versa.
Or a double willow spinnerbait versus a giant single Colorado. Same kind of bait, but completely different.
Yeah.
All right, so what's the fishing like down in Texas? Are the ramps jam-packed? I know here in Oklahoma, man, you can't find a spot to park.
Yeah, it's amazing. That beautiful drive up I-35 from DFW, where I live, to the OKC area, I saw exactly 4 bass boats all going down 35, whether they're fishing Arbuckle, maybe some of them were going down to some of our lakes down there. Murray, sure.
Texoma.
I saw a rat boat, may have been one of our guys, but fishing's good right now, very, very good. And I said it in my last article, my last blog entry at bassmaster.com. Dude, we're never home. We're never home in the months of March, April, going into May. So I'm using this opportunity really not only to get settled in at the new house, but just learning the local lakes, the local springtime lakes. It's so rare to fish our home lakes and see them on beds because we're always bed fishing or pre-spawn fishing or post-spawn fishing somewhere else in the country. So I'm really using this time to get out there and go fishing, and it has been awesome.
What all do you have around that Dallas area? Obviously, Fort gets a lot of the publicity. But there's a bunch of stuff to fish.
Man, and Lake Ray Roberts is a good one. We saw that. We saw that at a weird time. It was kind of the post spawn time in one of the TTBCs at the time, and Texas is known for giant bass, and so Ray Roberts, Possum Kingdom is a really good one out to the west of Fort Worth. That one's got a lot of giants. A lot of my buddies have been texting me, dude, you need to go. They're all catching 22 to 24 pounds on mag drafts, and I'm like, oh dude, all right, let's do it. So we'll probably head out there and that lake here in the next few days, and then just some of the smaller lakes. I know there was like an E50 on Eagle Mountain Lake years and years ago. KVD caught a 10 something pound. By the way, Kevin Van Dam, what is his deal in being so stubborn with a jerkbait? Have you noticed that?
Jeez, man.
It's well played.
Zaldain's giving me all kinds of grief.
Are all these lakes there? And I haven't been. I mean, I've been to Fork, but I haven't been to the rest of them. Are they like in metro areas? Is it like a Louisville style, or are these lakes like separated from the?
Yeah, they're outside.
Okay.
Lake Fork is kind of in East Texas. It's out there. And but as far as metro, there are a lot of Joe Pool Lake and Lake Louisville, Lake Lavon, a lot of little lakes around that really don't get the recognition, but I mean there are people all over the place, and it's no different than up here. I mean the people are fishing right now, so
a little bit bigger fish down there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, without a doubt. And the temperature difference, just this 140 miles or whatever it is from DFW to here, the temperature difference is like 15-20 degrees on average. So you guys are a little bit further behind. So I've been doing a lot of pre-spawn fishing down there, throwing the big mag drafts and things. And by the way, I brought some of this stuff here, and I want to throw it in a giveaway. So all the viewers and listeners out there,
let's do this before I get blown out on the instant feedback. Right? Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk to Chris for a little bit, and then we will take a break, and then we will come back with instant feedback questions. Cool. And the best instant feedback question today is going to get the prize pack from Chris.
Excellent. That sounds good. So it's a little pre-spawn swim bait pack, and these are the baits I've been throwing lately. We've had a lot of rain in this area, so the fish have been shallower than normal. So we've been catching a lot of big
It's
fish.
the only bait you throw.
I
now.
know, dude. It
Literally,
really is.
like, go try to find something where it's not mag draft related with Chris Zaldain on YouTube. Anything,
especially in the month of March and April, and you know, I'm like addicted to that bite. I mean, once you get that first bite on it, it's literally like a jig bite, the hardest jig bite you ever had, mixed with like a frog bite, mixed with whatever your spinnerbait bite. You know, it's absolutely addicting. So
I'm kind of selfish on this because I love to sight fish, and I told Matt yesterday, and everybody pretty much know I know nothing in the grand scheme of things when it comes to swim baits, glide baits, whatever, because I've never really messed around with it. But this time of the year, spawn, pre-spawn, not necessarily post-spawn, and when guys are looking at them and you can see them and they're cruising and roaming, let's do clean water first, then kind of stain water, then dirty water.
Sure.
What are the applications, Chris?
Yeah, just cleaner water stuff. We're always chasing wind, no matter what it is. Matt knows this. No matter what reaction bait you're throwing, but the whole swim bait thing, I say it all the time. It basically replaces a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait. So wherever you throw a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait, you can replace it with a mag draft and just go to town. It's one of the 6-inch version is one of the best. Just go and reel and just go down the bank and throw it. It really is. I know he sent me pictures of some giants he's caught on it. But lately I've been playing with the big 8-inch version. I mean, this one
here, throw that up in the camera.
Yeah, check that out.
Hang on, let me.
Oh, we got a new camera. This is the first time that's been used. Right. Look at that.
Yeah,
I'm impressed, Jeffrey.
Compared to my hand there, I mean, that is a big, big piece of meat. And, I say it all the time. When you're trying to convince a 5, 6, 7, 8 pounder, a fish that's been, and Carl talked about it yesterday, when you try to convince a fish that's 10 years old, been around the block a time or two, when you try to convince them into biting that fake piece of plastic that looks like a fish, it's got to be super realistic. It's got to have the right action. It's got to have the gills. It's got to have the eyeballs. You're trying to fool this fish that's been around. So presentation is everything, and the looks of a swim bait is everything. So I've been playing with that guy. I'm working on a YouTube video right now. Trait's on my butt. Finish that thing, because every morning I've been working on it, and we caught some really big ones on
so
camera.
You hear a lot of guys talk about, it's in the angler's head and the fish are just a fish and they're going to eat it. But you're saying you really believe that since the fish is old, it's smart, it's been around the block.
Oh, yeah.
See, now he's applying cognitive thought process to fish, like the fish is like examining it. But you believe that it's not just a confidence thing, that you get more bites the more tricked out your stuff is.
Yeah, and here's I've been throwing this spinnerbait. This is a Santone spinnerbait, Pretender spinnerbait, and they work. They work in the state of Oklahoma. They love it.
Hold that up. We got the new camera going on that one too.
But the size comparison, that spinnerbait going by versus that big giant swim bait going by. Those big ones, when they pull up to a log or pull up to a main point or like a single rock or a single dock or whatever it is, she owns that space. Those crappie you've been catching, even 2-pounders, that 8-pounder that I'm looking for, that 8-pounder that Carl's looking for, any crappie or any big piece of meal that swims by, she's going to expend the energy to go after that big meal and make it worth it, So shad and crappie or big thread gizzard shad or whatever it is. So if she's going to expend that energy on that spot that she owns, she's going to make it worth her while, and she's going to go after the
So
meat.
you talk about that, and you listen to like any of the muskie guys, and they're fishing for a muskie. It's almost like a wolf or a tiger, which is very apropos to be talking about that with a.
By the way, by the way, just real quick, on the way up on I-35 there, I actually Googled GW exotic.
Oh, you're right there.
Exotic zoo.
Yeah.
I got to stop by and at least take photos, man. I mean, that
it's
whole
right off the highway.
It is. Have you been?
Long time ago.
Really?
Yeah, long time ago.
Was old Joe Exotic running it back then?
Yeah.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Long time ago.
Huh.
It's weird, man. I just hope people don't think that that's the way Oklahoma
is.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's not. And even that town. I mean, one of the greatest high school football players in the state of Oklahoma came from Wynnewood.
Wynnewood, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So anyway.
So back to the fishing. We got
Josh Allen.
It's derailed our society.
Yeah, it totally has. Yeah.
All Are you a believer in that a bass has a home range just like a muskie? Then that will that one fish, whatever, when it reaches a size. I mean, when it's done, it's not like there's a bunch of them down there. I mean, that fish lives there, and how long does it live there? I mean, is that like its life?
Not very long at all. And you know, it's kind of like the same thing KVD does, and I've been studying his approach to tournament fishing pretty much my whole life. He targets active feeding fish. He wins tournaments. He wins classics. He wins AOYs. Active feeding fish. A fish that is taking advantage of the wind, of the conditions right now, of that ball of bait that just happened to get pushed into a spot, and he targets those, and he tries to fish as many of them as possible. Same kind of thing with the swim bait. We're looking for that obvious spot. You know, if we were to go out on let's just say Grand Lake, for example, those main points that we see them on, those main bluff ends that we typically see the locals on, tournaments are walling off of these spots. Everyone fishes them, but not a lot of guys throw that type of bait right there on them. So one of my favorite things I like to do with these is look for that one fish, that one big girl that pulls up to that real obvious spot. She's seen a million spinnerbaits that go by. She's seen a million wiggleworts that go by, a million jigs, and then you throw them this, and sometimes you throw it at a different or odd angle, and she commits to something like that, and boom, there's your kicker for the day. It's hard to get. You're not going to get 5, 6, 7, 8 bites on this. You're not going to get 5, 6, 7, 8 bites on the glida. But how do you separate yourself in a 5-fish tournament, you know, when most guys have 13, 14, 15 pounds? How do you get up to 18 to 22 pounds is with a giant kicker like that, 6-pounder, 7-pounder. So if you tell yourself, if you invest maybe an hour or two in the day and throw something like this or a big profile glide bait and you get that bite, boom, you're automatically, you know, above 90% of the field and you're going to be in the top. Someone asked a question yesterday, do you think, you know, a big time tournament, 3-day, 4-day tournament will be won on a glide bait solely? And that I've tried, he's tried, we've all tried, and it's not. The conditions would have to be absolutely perfect to win on a big bait 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row. It's just, you just don't, the conditions don't line up, you know, for it.
So what about Byron? What Byron did at Clear Lake?
Yeah, Clear Lake is a special place. It's kind of like a Lake Fork where, you know, they bite on, they target the big Clear Lake hitch there, and it was just a perfect kind of scenario in March, I believe that tournament was.
I mean, he did that.
Right.
And that's the only time I can remember.
That's right. And you were there, weren't you? Yeah, you were at that event.
And
it's very, very tough scenario unless you're in California, unless you're on a Lake Fork or something, you know, something like that.
But you bring up the forage and you talk about the hitch and stuff, and those fish are used to targeting that. But there's a ton of people who live in the country where they don't have big gizzard shad or hitch or big herring or anything. And I mean, they're dealing with thread fins or something like that. Why do those fish still eat that, even if there's nothing that really matches that forage?
Yeah. So I get that question a lot, and my answer is, yeah, you don't have trout. Yeah, you don't have gizzard shad in your lake, but big bass just love giant profiles underneath the water. And the other thing too is you could always adjust your colors as well. I like this whiteback shad or an albino color. You could always try to match a baby bass, because if you're fishing for largemouth bass, there are always smaller baby bass there. That's why you see a lot of these big giant wake baits and glide baits and baby bass patterns, because there's always baby bass in there that these big female fish like to eat.
Have you ever gotten on that pattern? I've never had confidence on a baby bass pattern. Like
the baby bass spook. Remember? I mean, that was very popular for a long time.
The flat A in the baby bass.
Right.
Like I've never had confidence in a baby bass pattern. I know they eat it, but like I know guys throw it, and I've heard guys catch them on it, but I don't own a single baby bass pattern anything in my boat. Do you?
No. I got a couple swim baits that look like it. The other thing is a common carp too. We throw a lot of swim baits that look like a common carp. So kind of your orangey colors, so a little more orange in there, or your browns.
Koi.
Yeah.
But do you? I mean, when was the last? Have you?
No, the last thing I've had that was baby bass was they had a 3-hook spook. That was baby bass.
Yeah, has anyone ever won a tournament, like a major tournament, on a baby bass pattern?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, they're readily available.
Sure.
I don't know.
I see them in multiple different types of baits.
Sure. And people buy, the people buy.
Think of all the, okay, this is blowing my mind now. Think of all the patterns you get on, all the different bait fish, all the crazy stuff. Have you ever heard a guy come in and say, I got on a pattern where they were feeding on baby bass?
Baby bass.
Those
only,
small.
no.
I mean,
Yeah.
how many times do you see those bass that are 3, 4, 5 inches swimming around in the shallows in the clear, especially on those warmer days?
Sure.
No, can't recall. I don't know.
I mean, maybe it would work in a lake with no forage that was dropping to where there was no cover in it, and they basically had to eat those. That was like the only kind of forage to survive.
Yeah, I mean, that was going back to my point is the larger than normal profile, no matter what color it is, big bass are just drawn to big things that swim underwater. So.
Here's somebody on the instant feedback saying that John Cox throws baby bass a lot.
Right, Florida guy.
Well, he never catches them.
I know. Oh, man.
And then I also get reminded, yes, Steve Kennedy, I was there too, caught him good on the bass tricks.
Okay, in that baby bass pattern, sure. Kind of a green moss back with black little
I don't
squiggles.
really, I guess that is kind of a baby bass. That's a Jackson Pollock baby bass pattern in the bass tricks.
Yeah. All right.
Throw some art in there.
I want to know this. All right. Carl gave his yesterday. What is your setup?
Okay.
That you can pass along to everybody, the best setup for if people want to throw that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it starts with a big line. I mean, this is a heavy bait. I don't know what, I think it's like 4 ounces or 3 ounces. 3 ounces. So that's a big piece of meat there. So you need heavy line, 25-pound test, Seagar and VizX, love that line, fluorocarbon line. The bigger that diameter, the more floatiness you have to it. Although fluorocarbon sinks, you want that big fat diameter just to kind of give it a parachute kind of effect. As you reel it through the water and that big line is moving through the water, it kind of lifts a little bit. So that's always good. So 25-pound test fluorocarbon, and I say it in my video I'm working on here, but back in the day I used to limit myself to 1 rod and to learn a Huddleston or learn this 10-inch swim bait, and I'd only take 1 rod out on the lake with me, and back then it was a flipping stick, and now I like a 7'8" Megabass Destroyer. It's called a Mark 48, kind of longer handle to really leverage that bait and really get a long throw on it, and that's kind of key. So 7'8", it's kind of a heavy action with a little bit of tip to it, and I could feel that tail thump, 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 thumping. So and then just an old school Corrado 300E, old school green Corrado with a wider spool on it. Love that rod, reel and line combination when I'm throwing the big stuff. And then just like the 6-inch mag draft that I throw during tournament competition. That's my tournament guide go-to right there. 15-pound fluorocarbon. Most people think it's 20, 17, 20. 15-pound fluorocarbon and a 7'2" jig rod, perfect pitch jig rod, and we're good to go on there. So when you actually get that bite, get a fish to commit on that thing right there. You got to make sure your knot's tied. Tight. You got to make sure your line is new. That could be a fish of a lifetime. You do not want to screw it up.
What about gear ratio?
Gear ratio, low. I like a 6'3" to 1, 6'2" to 1 gear ratio. Super low. Don't like fast. Do not like fast.
I like low. Like if you were to ask that question 20 years ago.
Yeah.
5, 3,
they'd go, I really like to burn it with a 6'2" to 1. And then when I slow down, I go to that 3.8 green Corrado.
Yeah.
Jeffries gave me one of those when I first started working for him. He gave me a wiggle wart. It was like the first time I'd been to Grand. And it was a spring. He gives me a wart. He said, throw it on this rod reel. So I go out there and I freaking cast it out, and I'm like cranking it.
You can't sit still,
and I can't
man.
feel it. Yeah. I can't feel it wiggling, and I like crank it further, and I can't feel it wiggle. I'm like cranking as fast as I can, and I look down. It says 3.8 to 1 on the reel.
Like this.
I wonder how many of those they sold. Yeah, exactly.
They sold a ton of them.
How do you reel in a fish if that fish comes at you like 5 feet?
Oh yeah, it's gonna put a giant dip in your line. Yeah. You could be like,
I still have that reel. Do you want it back?
I do.
It's sitting in a bag. It's been sitting there for a decade.
Bring it tomorrow.
It literally.
I want that back.
Okay, I'll bring it.
You would literally have to run to the back of your boat like Mike Anelli does. just you got to run back to catch up with the slack.
They really did.
You wouldn't throw a 3.8 on this, would you?
No way. No.
It was
5-1 is slow.
It was an Ozarks thing. There were a lot of people. It was like you wanted this movement in
wiggle work.
I mean, couldn't you just?
You could, but a lot of people like the rhythm.
Yep, exactly.
You're used to that rhythm, and you didn't have to adjust your rhythm with that 3-8-1.
There aren't too many guys on tour or either tours that fish a 5-1. Is it David Fritz? That's Fritz still, and he's like the cranking king. But not a lot of guys throw the 5-1.
A lot of guys do around here for the
A
rig, for the Alabama rig. They throw the 5-1 on Alabama rig, but that's about it. But
like Combs is a badass cranker. He's a 7-1 guy. I know Amart, he's a 7-1 guy while he's cranking.
I think Lucas might use some of the lower gear ratios,
lower
some 5-3-1, stuff like that.
Interesting.
All right, one more question.
How many do you own?
Oh, I'm
sorry. How many reels?
I got 2 that I just carry around in the back of the truck just in case.
So you won't have any 5s in the boat?
No.
At any point of the year? Doesn't matter if it's 39-degree water or not?
No.
Lowest is 6?
6, 6-1. Mainly 7-1. 8. It seems like 8-1 is really, really fast. The thing with a lot of guys try to sell you on the whole 8-1 thing while you're flipping, so that you can get in and out of there real fast. But with that higher ratio, when you hook up, flipping with 15 feet of line out or whatever it is, real close. Getting that handle to move with an 8-1 reel is a little bit harder. And a lot of times you handcuff yourself. It's harder to start it back up compared to like a really moderate medium 7-1. And that's kind of like the standard now. I feel like a 7-1, and you could do a lot with the 7-1.
Now, just for semantics here, then your gear ratio is how many revolutions the spool makes for one complete turn
of the handle.
Correct. So on that 3-8-1, that spool, especially if you're making a long cast with it, because you're going to be bringing in less line if you have less line on your spool, which is why David Fritz talks about inches per turn instead of gear ratios. 21 to 24 inches is what he wants. So in one revolution, that spool is going around 3.8 times, whereas in the 8-1s, it's going around 8 times. So every time you barely move it is a third of a turn.
Almost 3 times as fast.
It's almost 3 times as fast.
That brings up another good point. Tip-wise, I see a lot of times, man. I'll see weekend guys or beginners, whatever it is. Man, I'll look on their deck and man, their spool is like half full of line. And I'm like, man, you are totally missing out on your gear ratio, your leverage for the fish, your castability, your casting length. Think about that. I mean, if you have half the spool filled with line, I mean, your casting distance goes down probably 30-40%. And so I always tell people to fill up your spool almost all the way to the end of that spool, so your line is almost completely flush with the end of that spool. It's you don't want to be robbed of castability, especially with cranking, spinner baiting, or reaction bait fishing like the swim bait here. You want that castability.
I'm not kidding. I want that reel back. Especially since you haven't used it in 10 years. So make sure you bring it back.
I'll bring it back.
Bring it back.
It's like a collector's item.
It is. All right. It is.
I think I might have actually tried to sell it 3 or 4 times, and people have looked at it and gone,
oh my gosh.
People have looked at it and gone, what do you do with this? And I was like, that's why I don't use it.
Yeah. Bring it back, please. All right, Chris. One more question, and then we'll take a break and come back to the instant feedback questions. With the logistical nightmare that's going to take place with all the rescheduling and everything, one of the things that I've suggested is this is an opportunity for the Classic to get moved. If you listen to the show, set things up to where maybe you guys have 2-3 more events, and then you have a major epic event at the end of the year, 150,000 first place. Everybody gets invited back next year. Sure. If they do get in, say 2 or 3 events for the Opens, whoever qualifies, they get into, the field increases, 15 people or 10 people or whatever the number is. And then you work toward having the Classic for 2021 at the end of the year. And then it moves around, and now you have a full season, hopefully if everything goes okay. And it's something that can build upon through that entire season, where there is an equitable opportunity for guys to qualify for the Classic and to retain their tour cards. What are your thoughts?
Man, that sounds great. Bash should hire you for some consulting work, no doubt. I mean, you've done some thinking on that. I really haven't thought about that, or how or where, when they're going to stack our tournaments. we normally have 8-9 tournaments or whatever it is, and man, to really backload those throughout in the back of the year, it doesn't really. I'm a summer and fall type fisherman anyway. I love reaction bait fishing, and that's a great time to throw a reaction bait. So it doesn't really matter to me as long as it's fair for everyone. I'm a ninth season guy. I've been doing it 9 years now. I kind of worry about the 1-year guys, the 2-year guys, the 3-year guys. Not only sponsorship wise, they don't have the opportunity to showcase their sponsors, their brand new sponsors, on the big stage. And so I'm not going to say we're guys like me that have been around are comfortable, because we're not really. But I just like to see it fair, and just a fair playing field and a fair opportunity to showcase your skill. That's why you're an elite angler. Yeah. You have a certain set of skills that the fishing community wants to see, and we're all starving for it. We really are. All your viewers and listeners, they all want to see us back out there, of course. And so I could go either way on it. But to have a fall classic, that would be pretty sweet.
Yeah. The glaring fact is you have guys out there that have only fished 2 days.
Yes.
And it's April 1st.
Yes, right. They had to live through the classic, work the classic, whatever it was. Yeah.
2 days. And trying to get the number of events that still remain from a scheduling standpoint.
Logistical nightmare.
I mean, you may do back-to-back events. You may have 4 tournaments in 6 weeks if you're trying to get them in. And I think that's going to put a burden on a lot of people. Now you've totally backloaded what you have going on, and for it to be fair and equitable for all parties involved. I always talk about the anglers, the sponsors, and the fans.
Sure.
So come up with something that takes care of all three.
Sure.
And you've got a win-win situation for everybody.
I completely agree.
All right. What do you think, Matthew? What are you looking at?
I'm not opposed to that at all.
All right.
I think it's
this is a lot of angst and in these trying times, and I just don't know, from the economical standpoint, where we're going to stand. We just don't know. And at the end of the season, there's no doubt it's not going to be a depression, but a recession, no doubt.
I'm still under the impression that we'll get this under control. Everyone will do their part, and then the August-September tournaments will go on. They'll back end the 3 tournaments. It helps that it's Eufaula, Santee Cooper, and Chickamauga that you can fish into November, December in. You'll get maybe 3 of the 4 opens in each division. We'll see some new techniques in play, and then the classic qualifications will go on as expected. The open qualifications will go on as expected, and assuming that there's not a second round of this, we'll all go in living, in the new world going into 2021 with just a back-ended schedule.
Sure. We need everyone to keep buying lures, keep buying fishing equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, taking a break, coming back with the instant feedback questions here on a Wednesday. Everybody stay tuned.
Let's face it. Fishing electronics are no longer an afterthought. They've become a necessity. And at the Bass Tank, our experts match you with the right electronics, provide professional installation, and educate you to help maximize your catching results while providing support along the way. Because let's be honest, it's about catching, not just fishing. And when you're ready for better results, join the Bass Tank team. Visit us today on Facebook or go to thebasstank.com.
Blue Water by TH Marine, offering LED lighting solutions for your boat, trailer, truck, ATV, and so much more. Engineered and built to be rugged with waterproof and submersible options. Designed for easy installation, Blue Water is available in a variety of colors and styles. All backed by a limited lifetime warranty. Blue Water by TH Marine.
The name SPRO says it all. SPRO stands for Sports Professionals. When you look at the pro staff that SPRO has brought on board over the past 15 years, it's been pretty incredible. I mean, one got it just then. From the development of the rock crawler to the McStick, from the Fat Papa to the Little John series, when you tie a SPRO bait on, you know it's been designed by a professional to get the job done.
While I travel the country on the Bassmaster Elite Series, I simply can't let the weather be the reason I don't win $100,000. That's why I use AFCO clothing to keep me warm, dry, and protected from whatever Mother Nature wants to throw at me. My season depends on it. My career depends on it. AFCO, any fish, any water.
All of us on the Pro Tournament Trail use Gamakatsu hooks.
Why?
Because they are absolutely the best.
It's not about how many bites you get.
It's how many you put in the boat.
Gamakatsu makes hooks for every fishing style.
We didn't come this far to lose fish.
Did you?
For more information, visit gamakatsu.com.
The Big Bite Baits Kamikaze Swim On is a very unique bait, and it's got a full body but with ribs to give it a bigger profile but not more plastic. It's got a jointed tail that gives it a lot of action, as well as this up and down crawl type trail with holes and ribs in it, so it creates a bubble trail almost. This bait is supposed to be fished upside down or vertical like this on a grate for a chatterbait. I prefer it on a swim jig as well, but you can also cut it down and put it on the back of a finesse jig. You know, flip it around for some spotted bass or flipping docks. Anytime you want a small, compact, you know, little trailer for it, this is great for it. So check out the full lineup of swim-ons at bigbitebaits.com.
All right, we are back. It is ready to go to the instant feedback. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go down the line. And since we have Chris in studio today, I'll try to get to as many as we can. You don't need to be anywhere, do you? Do you need
No,
to be? Okay.
no, let's
right.
go till noon. Come on.
Wow. All right, let's see here.
But keep in mind, you gotta by the end of this thing, we gotta go back. You'll still have the
they'll be
instant
posted.
feedback, and you can go back and say who it is.
Craig at Oneida Lake wants to know, what is your rod and line setup for the new Mega Bass Vibration X blade bait, and what is your application for this bait?
Oh yeah, the was it the Dyna? Really cool, kind of not spin, but you know, everyone knows blade baits, and Craig from Oneida, Craig Taylor, he would know, you know, cold water, smallmouth, deep rocks. I love throwing a blade bait, and most of the hardcore blade baits are the blade bait fishermen are the same way. Spinning rod, braid, fluorocarbon leader, and I like something that's super soft, although it's, you know, 3/8 ounce, half ounce blade metal. They've got small treble hooks on them, and whenever you have small treble hooks or small drop shot hook, whatever it might be, and braided line, you want a super soft rod. So I like an Orochi Double X, either the shaky head rod, it's a 7-foot rod, real parabolic action, fishing real deep, works really good. Or if I'm fishing it shallow, it'll be the Stinger shot rod, which has got a really, really soft tip. Whenever you peg those fish, big smallmouth, deep on blade baits like that Dyna, you know, it keeps those hooks pegged. And again, you know, braid to fluorocarbon fishing on a spinning rod, man, like almost 100% of the guys on tour now throw it. And you just got to keep in mind, you know, that braid's got zero stretch, so you got to make up for it somehow, either with the rod or the length of the leader, or adjust your hook set. Most people don't want to adjust a hook set, so kind of a longer 7-foot, that shaky head rod's a really good rod for that.
All right, Dave wants to know, and he asked this yesterday, and I didn't get to it, but does anybody know why Lucky Craft wasn't at the Bassmaster Classic Expo?
Nope.
No, I don't.
Good question, yeah.
I have no idea.
I was busy. I don't know.
Andy in Indiana wants to know, how many rainbow trout baits do you own?
Oh, Andy. Boy, it's funny. After 9 years of fishing the tour, I don't think I've been to maybe 2 or 3 lakes that a rainbow trout pattern or, you know, rainbow trout eating fish played.
Have you been to one?
You know, just your your White River, your Bull Shoals, your Table Rocks, I'll pull it out just because deep cold water White River trout are in these places.
There's I guess there are trout in those lakes, aren't there?
Yeah, and then the Georgia
kind of.
Yeah, the Georgia tournaments. Yeah, there are. Yeah, kind of.
It's not Taneycomo, but
yeah,
right. Those Georgia lakes, those up Highland reservoirs up in Georgia, they have some trout too. But
New York, any of that stuff have the trout?
Yeah,
lake trout.
Lake trout. Yeah.
No rainbows.
No. Back in California, like I said earlier, I mean, I'd force myself to learn a 8-inch Huddleston or any of the trout swim baits. I'd make my own. And now you look at my swim bait boxes, and I've pretty much taken all the rainbow trout patterns out of it, and it's all shad related or some variation of shad. So.
All right, Dave wants to know, what's the biggest difference between the new FXR and the old FX?
Ooh. If I were to put it in a couple words, the difference between the new Skeeter FXR and the Skeeter FX that's been around for a decade, the biggest thing is instead of a hole that does this, with the older FX, it does more of that. It's just a sharper hole. The strakes, the turning is way better. You'll see the lines in the hole. They drop down faster, they're longer, which enables you to turn harder. It's better in rough water, obviously, because it cuts that water and re-entry as you launch off some of those big giant waves and you land back down. It just kind of lays you back in the water, so it's really cool. We're seeing speeds up to 74 miles per hour, whereas the FX, we were seeing speeds of 71 and a half. And again, it's wider too. It's a whole lot wider, and you realize that when you have 6 rods over here and 9 rods over here, and you still have this big space in between. So faster, turns sharper, and it's wider.
All right, there you have it. Scott in Virginia, can you talk a little bit about using swim baits for smallies this time of the year?
That's a good question. And Scott, out of where?
Virginia.
Virginia. We're going to have to send him some swim baits. That's a good question, because the whole smallmouth and swim bait thing, it's very weird. I have never met a smallmouth that would... you're throwing this by, which is
holding a spinnerbait,
Santone spinnerbait.
Hang on. Let me get the shot up here. There we go.
And for the iTunes listeners, he's holding up a spinnerbait now.
Yeah. Yep. So I've never met a smallmouth, especially the kind we target, 5 and 6 pounders, that would see this swim by and go, "No, I'm not going to bite that," and prefer something like that instead, or something of the same size. If that smallmouth is up there on that windblown beautiful point with a little maybe a bit of a mud line with some bait around, it's going to bite whichever one of those is closer. So the whole smallmouth thing and big swim baits, for one, we've got a 3/0 hook, or 2/0 hook on that 8-inch mag draft there. So yes, they'll come up and they'll slap it. But if you throw a jerkbait in there, throw a spinnerbait in there, it'll bite it anyway.
Then you would rather catch them on a jerkbait or a spinnerbait.
Exactly, because you're going to land them. Yeah, you're going to land those fish. So, some of my biggest big bait buddies, they've gone up and did the whole big swim baits for smallmouth, and the results are just about the same.
I would imagine
22-pound bags. Yeah,
a lot of pike and muskie breaking off.
A lot of that
expensive swim baits.
A lot of that too. So, like I said, I've never met a smallmouth that would turn away from a spinnerbait or a chatterbait or a jerkbait or something just to get one of those.
What about spots?
Spots, it all depends on the forage. We go back to the rainbow trout thing up in Northern California. Big spots love that profile, so it's a little bit different. And I feel like spots are a little more picky too. They do get very picky.
On a swim bait, are spots more picky than a largemouth? If you were to rank them in 3, obviously smallmouth least picky.
Least picky. If it's moving and it's chartreusey, I mean, they're going to smoke
on a swim
it.
bait then between.
Yeah, spots will be more picky. Largemouth are just kind of mediocre across the way.
Okay, so spots most picky, largemouth in the middle.
In my opinion, absolutely. Yep.
A couple of people want to know, do you use a stinger?
I don't. I do not. Yeah, no, I don't. When I'm throwing the big 8-inch or the 10-inch or the type of fish that I'm targeting are 6, 7, and 8 pounders, and they absolutely gobble that thing up. I mean, it folds just like a little burrito, gone in her mouth. And that one single hook is nice. You can deflect it off cover a little bit better. It doesn't snag around as much. I'm not a fan of the stingers. I'm really not. So.
Did you design that bait, or was that just a bait that you took and really learned how to use?
It's a bait I took and really learned how to use. I will say that when I got involved with Megabass, it was a rod-only deal. They brought me on to promote the rods. I love the rods. Growing up in California, seen them all over California. Love the jerkbait, of course. They brought me on for rods only. I was with another bait company at the time, Strike King, matter of fact, at the time. And so I was using Strike King baits, Megabass rods, and I remember when the Mag Draft first came out as a 6-inch version, and it was, man, it must have been 8-9 years ago. And I looked at it and I go, oh my gosh, I'm going to do some work on that thing. But I couldn't promote it really, right, until, I really started catching them on it. It wasn't until a couple years later, I think it was 15 or 16, where we had that double header, what was it, I forget the name of the lake right next to Bull Shoals.
Norfolk?
Bull Shoals, Norfolk. Yeah, that was a really good debut of a Mag Draft.
Very nice. All right, Binkwood wants to know, can you talk a little bit about snaps and O-rings?
Yeah. I've never been a fan of snap. Do you use snaps?
Not on that.
No.
Not on like that.
But wiggle works.
Occasionally, I'll use a snap. Now, I don't know if I will after the David Fritz interview, because literally what he said was counterproductive to what I thought happened with a snap. So, like, if I was burning it, I use Cumberland this past year.
Mm-hmm.
I put a snap, then the O-ring, then the bait.
Come on,
but
really?
I was burning it, and I just
right.
It gave me the true. And David Fritz was like, without saying it, was basically like, you're really, really, really wrong to do that.
What is he? He ties right to the O-ring.
He ties straight to the O-ring.
Yeah, and
because
agree.
he
With
wants that. He
crankbaits and
wants
things.
Yeah,
sure. I know some hardcore swim bait guys that swear by a snap, and the whole idea behind that is that, especially with these mag drafts, glide bait's the same way. You want freedom up by the nose of that swim bait. You don't want it restricted where your line is tied completely to the nose. So you just want a little bit of give there. So especially with the glide bait, you'll see that thing turn left, turn right. Same thing with the jerk bait. You want that lateral movement, and an O-ring or a snap allows that. But these mag drafts, they've got enough head motion. I'll just tie straight to the line tie there. So I'm not a big fan of the snaps. In short, I'm not a big fan of the snaps. The crankbaits that come with, the O-rings, I just tie right to the O-ring, or split ring. And it's really cool. A lot of the Megabass baits, they've got my favorite ones are the oval type split rings. Those are super easy, and it keeps your knot off of the little split. That's always dangerous. I've lost fish because that knot is in the split, and then after a few fish, the split works its way around the knot, and there goes your crankbait or whatever it is. So I prefer the O-ring, the oval type split rings when I'm throwing them.
All right, good stuff. Interesting question from Brian in Minnesota. Have you ever used a wire leader like tieable titanium when throwing the Mad Draft? Here in Minnesota, we have a lot of toothy critters, and it costs a lot of money when you lose,
it
one
does.
of those baits.
No, it does. And you're in Minnesota or, Michigan, wherever you're from, whenever you're throwing something like that, man, the big pike, the big northerns, the big muskies, they love that type of profile. And just to save you money, I would absolutely use a titanium leader. I've done that up at St. Clair, and I've thrown that 8-inch for smallmouth just to get them to follow it, just to kind of give up their position, their location, for me to come back the next day and throw, let's say, a 3-inch spark shad or something at them. So when you have that titanium leader on a big 8-inch mag draft or a 6-inch, those smallmouth will still follow it. Largemouth will still eat it. It's just really the profile and the colors, and it just looks real. So whether it has a titanium wire nose coming off of it or not, I think a lot of those fish, especially up north, will still commit to it.
Have you ever not fished it because of pike, muskie, trash fish like that? I mean, have you ever come across an instance where you're like, I can't make a cast without catching one of these things?
No. I've got a pretty good backstock in my truck, so I let her rip, man.
You just burn through them?
I let her rip, yeah.
Where's the worst place you've ever fished?
For that?
Yeah, where it's just trash fish, they're not trash fish. Where it's non-target species. Non-target species.
Yeah.
the Mississippi River up there.
Really?
They've got a whole lot. Yeah. The drum have become a huge problem. Not problem, but nuisance up on the western side of Lake Erie. Tons of, you can't even throw a tube anymore.
Like, what's your ratio?
The drum. Oh man, up in Erie.
Yeah.
Wow. It's especially when you're throwing a tube. I mean, it's like 8 fish to every 10 is a drum. Oh
Wow.
yeah. Oh yeah. If some of your listeners and viewers are from that area, they know there are a lot of drum up in the western.
They're big too, aren't they? Like 10-pound
They're
drum?
time wasters is all they are. And you got them on spinning gear, so they just waste your time, especially when you're in a tournament.
It's fun if you have kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
All right, let's keep going here. Justin, for a friend in Florida, wants to know, have you ever used that on Florida lakes?
I have, yeah. There's a color called brownie, and it's got a kind of a brownish gold back with a translucent body, and I've caught some really good ones. And I like it in this version. So, the original Mag Draft has got treble hooks in them, and it already comes, rigged with a harness. They call it a Mag Draft because it's got a magnet in the belly, and it holds that treble hook when you're, skipping it or making real long casts, and there's big splashes and things. They just came out with a freestyle version. So a freestyle is, it's basically a blank. So it would be like a hollow belly or a spark shad. It's up to you to rig it. I love rigging this thing on it like a 7/0 swim blade, trocar swim blade hook, and it's basically just your inline belly weighted hook, and it's super weedless, and they absolutely smoke it in Florida. Everyone knows, when you go to Florida and you're out there with a guide, they shiner fish a lot, and that brownie color looks just like a shiner. It moves like a shiner, and it gets bit like a shiner. So you got to rig it weedless, but it works really, really well in Florida.
All right, cool question here from Mark in Minnesota. Have you ever had an example like in muskie fishing where you had a big one follow it, wouldn't bite, you leave, and then you come back and you actually end up catching it?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's one of the one of the best things about larger than normal profiled baits, and when they give up their position, for one, you're in that area because you've got a feeling that you could do very well there in the tournament. But you look at your waypoint where you're at compared to your waypoint, or that being a point or a dock or whatever it is, and you pull that fish off of it and it follows it, and oh my gosh, your glasses fog up. It's so big, and then it swims right back to that spot. You basically use this as a tool to give up that fish's location, and a lot of times I'll just go in there and give them the 1-2 punch. I won't throw this back in there because it didn't commit to it unless the wind starts blowing or conditions change or something like that. Then I'll come back with the same bait, but a lot of times I'll just throw a simple wacky rig. Although it's summertime, although it's fall, everyone thinks wacky rigging is a springtime thing. It is a great the second punch in a 1-2 punch for big giant fish. So yes, not only does it get a lot of big bites, but it gives up their position for you to circle back an hour later and catch that fish.
Okay, let's say you're going down a stretch of docks. Let's say you got 25 docks.
Yep.
Everything's perfect. Let's say second dock in, you get an 8-pounder that follows it out.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to throw that bait down the rest of the docks and see what's there? Or are you just going to go, okay, this is a good stretch, and you're going to go back down the rest of those docks on tournament day? Because do you feel like a fish has the better chance of committing it's the first time he's seen that bait go past him?
Yes, that's a very good question, Matt. And that exactly. The very first time is always your best opportunity. Okay. But like I said, like that beautiful row of docks, and there's a dozen of them, and that second dock I see that giant. Yeah, there's 12 docks there. It won't take me but 30 minutes to thoroughly work through there. But I will come back the next day. Let's say the tournament starts and the conditions are identical. Let's say there's just a little slight ripple. What I love to do, that row of 12 docks, what I like to do during practice is I'll pull up just like anyone else and position my boat at the end of the dock, cast to the bank, and fish it out. What I love doing on tournament day, especially if someone else finds that row of docks, is I will take the time to position my boat. I will go in between the docks, okay, and pull up to these docks almost like I'm fishing from the bank. So instead of fishing at the end of the dock, casting to the bank and reeling out, I'll take the extra time and just hold the rod in my hand, troll to the bank, and then make the cast out towards the middle of the lake and just swim it uphill alongside the dock. And I saw that 8-pounder the day before. Let's give them a different angle. Let's show them something different, and maybe make a nice little skip cast out into the lake. And a lot of times, I mean, it's almost like 80-90% of the time you'll get that fish to bite. Yeah, it's amazing. It really is.
All right. Good question from Matt in Alabama. How do you use your graphs when setting up a swim bait bite?
Yeah, that's a good question. Humminbird 360 imaging, that has really changed the way I fish points, the way I fish docks, any spot. So I rely really on that 360 imaging. For those who don't know, it's like an underwater radar where the transducer is spinning 360 degrees, and it shows fish, yes. These other, what your boat's rigged with, some of these other electronics show fish really well. Humminbird 360 mega imaging shows fish here and there, but it really reveals the structure, the cover that hold those bass, and it really shows you the angle to present that swim bait. So a lot of times I love targeting real obvious spots above the water, but with 360 imaging it reveals the real obvious spots underneath the water, like that long sloping point that you've known for years. That's a good point, I just don't know why until you look at 360 imaging, or you have to idle over it and there's that one single rock structure down there or whatever it is, and that's why those big giant solo fish pull up to a spot like that. But I'm always trying to cast uphill, so that 360 imaging helps me in that way. So in short, I love to just get in real shallow, and I'm literally in 2-3 feet of water, sink the talons, cast out the 20 feet, let it hit the bottom, just slow reel it uphill. And it's like the crankbait theory. If you're not banging off something, you're not going to get a bite. Kind of similar to swim bait, just keep it in that strike zone the longest.
That's the opposite of what 95% of people are doing.
Yeah.
They're going down the bank casting downhill.
Oh, yeah. And they're throwing that spinnerbait, and they're throwing that crankbait, and they're casting to the bank, and you're only in the strike zone for 30-40% of the cast, and then it starts coming up, and that's where those big giants like to hang out, in that little deeper water just off of that obvious piece of cover. So when you're casting out deeper, that swim bait's just swimming uphill real nice. It stays close.
Wait, so total percentage, every time you're throwing a mag draft, a big swim bait, what percentage of the time are you fishing uphill? Because I think this is key right here. Because I'm 99% of the time fishing downhill, Chris. I'm fishing uphill if I get it snagged uphill and then decide to lob one out on the way back out to continue fishing downhill.
I would say 60 to 70% of the time I'm trying to fish it uphill.
Really?
Now that also includes when I'm on a really good swim bait bite. I mean, my boat is on the bank. It is almost hitting rocks, and I'm casting out. But that also includes casting across points, and just even if it's just the slightest couple degrees of an uphill presentation, that's all the difference in the world. It really is.
Wow.
That's just the way you think it's the way they're positioned, the way they set up is easier for them to ambush? Why does that work?
My theory is, again, we're dealing with 6, 7, 8 pounders, and they're very smart fish. And I believe that as you cast deep, okay, you've got kind of, the bank that's like this, and here's your water. As the bank is like this, and most people set up here and cast to the bank and fish out. As I set my boat up here and cast out into the deeper water, and my swim bait kind of falls down towards 2-3 feet off the bottom, this whole duration of the cast right here, my bait is in the strike zone, which happens to be close close to the bottom there. Those big females like to hang out close to the bottom. But my theory is that when you have that swim bait halfway to the boat, there's a lot of times we'll talk about those followers, big followers, especially when the wind isn't blowing, but it kind of gives the fish the security, or it gives them, they're apex predators. They want to pin bait up against something. So those followers will turn into committers, and it's because they feel like they're pinning it up against that point. And that's why points are so well. Wind-blown points are such a hot spot for bass, because it's an ambush point. Big largemouth love pinning things up against walls and up against rock points and trees and stuff, so that when you work it uphill, it kind of gives that fish the illusion that, oh man, I've got this big 8-inch piece of meat pegged up against this point, and I'm going to commit to that thing. It works very well.
That's pretty cool.
It's kind of like how when a guy's trying to get away from the cops, the worst thing you can do is
corner
box
yourself.
yourself for the
It's
corner.
corner
And
yourself.
if you
Yep.
listen to PD Live, they're like, look at this dumbass.
Yep.
We got him now.
Sticks, man.
And when they get away, it's when they head out to
Yep.
the highway in the open fields.
Yep. And think about that. When you cast that big swim bait, you're out deeper and you cast to the bank, which everyone does, and swims it out. That big largemouth's looking down there, and she's like, well, that big 8-inch thing could swim 360 degrees in the water anywhere to get away from me, and
That's a great point.
I just expended my energy.
Great.
If that 8-inch swim bait's going this way, man, I've got that sucker pegged. Now I'm gonna eat it.
So let me ask you this: would it be better if you're doing that? Casting, you're on the bank, you're casting that way, to go at an angle to cover more area, or do you want to go straight?
Yep, more at an angle, absolutely. But as long as there's just some type of uphill motion to it, I'll cast out across points a lot. And, of course, a point sticks out like that. When you cast out across, the first half of your cast is technically uphill, and that is a great pinning point for them.
Think about it in California on that. How many of those guys catch those megas off the bank?
Look at Butch Brown.
They catch them a lot off the bank.
Off the bank, absolutely. Yeah. And Butch Brown's a Huddleston guy out there, and he's out of his little aluminum boat. You'll always see him casting out in open water. It's because he's fishing that sucker uphill.
Huh. So you have a lot of conversations with dumbasses like me and Mark who are just like, if you were to have a conversation about, this stuff, theory, we're talking deep swim bait, abstract swim bait theory with two other guys, off the record, never make it out to the media, everyone's 100% honest. Who are the other two guys that you're having this conversation with?
That's a good question. That's a great question. Mike Long? No, not him.
That's bed fishing.
I know. Oh man, that's a tough question. That Butch Brown guy's pretty good. I've seen his stuff. But man, I don't. Let's say on tour, BP's a really good swim bait guy.
Pollen it?
Yeah, and I've been in the boat with him, and we fished glide baits and stuff, but we didn't do a lot of the boot tail style.
Hey, Big Polly in New York wants to know, what about Matt Allen?
Matt Allen's an excellent swim bait guy too, and he's very informative, and he knows how to explain those bites. So he's got a really cool YouTube channel. He would be one of them too. To really. But here's the thing about swim bait guys, especially out west, you never hear about them. I don't even hear about them, and there are some hammer swim bait guys out there that just like keeping it quiet, keeping it low key, social distance, and that's how they live their whole life. Like they've got the pictures on their phone, scroll through and see these 14-pounder, and that's my biggest fish, by the way, is about a 14. But they scroll through the phone, and they have many of teen-sized fish, and
they just don't care that
you
no
never
one
hear
else
about
knows.
it. No,
They do it for
never
the
hear
love of
about it. Yeah, they got the big black socks that go up to their knees. And you got the flat bill brim, and maybe a tad or two, and
aluminum boat.
Yeah, fully custom rod. Like spiral wrap rods and aluminum boats.
Yeah.
How many of those guys are there, do you think?
Oh man,
thousands, hundreds, 50,
hundreds
that are like legit serious about it.
Well, legit serious dozens.
Even the guys you haven't heard of.
Yeah, just
because there's
dozens.
only like 5. There ain't that many of those guys.
No, yeah, but there's a lot of them that just
like working class zero.
Those type, those kind of guys.
Badass.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah,
but for every one of him, there's 5 that you don't see that don't have the YouTube channel
That's
and
exactly
don't do
right.
it.
And they all have got the love for that bite, like that one bite. I remember going out and just skunked on Friday, skunked on Saturday, skip a day, and go out Monday, and then that one bite made that 4-day span so worth it.
Do you ever come across those guys that like hate the fact that you talk about it, that you're putting it on TV, that are like, bro, what the hell?
No, I get it a lot with the mag draft. Like, dude, we've been killing on the mag draft. Thanks, bro, for throwing that out there. I'm like, it's kind of my job.
All right, let's see here. Dave in South Carolina, not Dave Rush, who is BTL bass guy.
He's in a bunker right now.
Yeah.
Is he in South Carolina?
Disinfecting his hands.
Yeah. Is there a time of the year that you would not throw big baits and only throw a downsized version?
The winter time is pretty tough to get bites on this type of swim bait. Same thing that goes with the glide bait, because like I said at the top of the show there, it just replaces your 3/8 ounce spinner bait. So a lot of times we're just kind of throwing in and around the bank, real shallow cover. Works best in 10 feet or less, in my opinion. So like wintertime, And so where I was going with that is it's like a spinnerbait where they feed up. They're feeding up. They're either feeding right in front of their eyesight or they're going up to feed on it. Wintertime, they feed down a lot. So that's when, your jigs, your blade baits, stuff like that work really well. So in the wintertime, I'll adjust and I'll go with like an underspin. That Z-spin head we release is a really good one. Basically just a lead-headed swim bait. So spark shads and Z-spins with little hazardong shads. So we will downsize. But for this style of fishing, both the glide baits and the mag draft type stuff, it's always feeding up. So whenever they're feeding down, like in the wintertime, it's really, really tough.
All right, Frenchie wants to know, many of the pros use 20 to 25 pound mono for a leader and say that their hookup is much better because of stretch. Ask Chris, what is the advantage of a fluoro leader, and if he still wants a rise in his presentation?
Do we know if that's spinning application? I'd assume.
I think he's.
Because you're starting to see a lot of pros, so I'll answer both. You're starting to see a lot of pros doing the braid to fluoro thing, even with bait casting gear, flipping. I've been doing that as well. I mean, it doesn't require as much of a hook set. You just kind of lean into them. Fluorocarbon, it stretches too. It really does. And depending on the fluorocarbon brand you prefer and the model of line you prefer, I like to play with that as well. I like the Seaguar Tatsu is really good stuff. It's super, super strong, but it's got a little bit of stretch to it. Where, if you feel like you're pulling the hook out of fish's mouth, either bait cast or spinning cast, or you're bending hooks out or whatever, simply go with a little bit longer leader. Again, braid, no stretch. Just a little bit longer fluorocarbon leader. I normally do about 3 pulls off the spool there, so that's 3, 6, and 9, about 9 feet. Maybe go to 12, 15 feet just to give it a little more stretch. I have not used like a light monofilament on my spinning applications. It's always fluorocarbon, but I could see where a monofilament leader with a bait caster, let's say like a 30 or 40 pound braid on a bait caster, throwing a big walking bait or something and a giant, a 15 or 20 pound mono leader would really be beneficial. But I haven't tried. It's always been fluorocarbon for me.
All right, David in Wisconsin wants to know, have you gotten a chance to play with the new Destroyer P5 from Japan?
I have not. No, I don't even know what that is.
Do you, Matt?
No, as I say, you
there's so many different.
You get online or you start talking to people. You're like, how do you know about all this stuff? And then they're like, well, it's the 974 368 that came out of Indonesia and then moved over.
I used to be like that. I used to know every model, and now they're just really just tools. I've settled with the Destroyer series and the Orochi XX series, and they make a technique specific rod kind of all across the board. They, whatever technique you're using, they've got a model for.
Epic Eric, who's over with Smallmouth Crush, Travis Manson, this dude, like, his passion is, so like, he likes the jackhammer. Now here's 11 different brands of overseas and Australia and South America and every vibrating jig.
And he has them?
And he has them.
Wow.
And he's like that with everything. He's like, okay, here's the East Tennessee Gold Standard balsa, and here's the 18 other versions that guys have made.
Handmade.
And he's got all of them. Like, you guys need to follow him on social media.
That's
you just
hard
do
to keep
Epic
up
Eric
with,
or get through with through Travis. But he's one of those dudes. It's insane. He's like, have you heard of this? And I'm like, no, I haven't heard of the last 9 baits that you showed me. I'm not going to hear this next one.
I always have anxiety when it comes to things like that. When I hear about that, or if a guy says, man, you have to be throwing this to get a bite, one of my competitors, you have to, and like, yeah, I may have one, but I don't like catching them on that one because I don't have more, so I'm always super anxious about that. I like to throw stuff where I have a giant
but like, if you
backlog
find something, how do you do it? Because I mean, you're really good and you've won a lot of money and caught a lot of fish. So like, let's use a bladed jig for an example. Let's just say you're throwing a thunder cricket or a jackhammer. Are you like happy with that because you're catching fish on it? Or are you going to go, okay, here's a jackhammer. Now let's go spend a lot of hours of our lives to see if there's something better than this.
No, I'm one of those guys that's satisfied with that. Maybe play with the trailer here and there, but if it's like readily available, if it's available to the fishing public, that's what I try to throw. That way I could talk about it and share knowledge about it. But every once in a while there'll be like a real trick bait that I've used some like the wake baits out of Japan, and I've got a few balsa ones that man I'll never part ways with, and the rats and stuff like that. Really hard to find, really hard to get, but they get bites. But yeah, like the jackhammer or whatever it is, I'm satisfied with it. And what's crazy is there's guys on tour who are just really, really good, and they're just like, oh, well, just give it to me. That's cool. It's got a little bit of rust on it. Whatever, I'll make it work. I'm just like, whoa. Like, I'm not like that on that side of the spectrum, but I'm also not like, oh, it's got to be, I got to find something better than that. So I'm in between.
All right, Nate B in Minnesota wants to know, I've seen Chris in some of his tournaments. He bends one of the trebles out and inserts into the mag draft.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of this?
That's one of my biggest secrets, and that's that YouTube video I'm working on right now. I'm about to upload it to my YouTube in a couple days here, so make sure you subscribe to that. That is like the best modification you could do to this style of swim bait. The mag draft happens to be a fish catching swim bait, but any other swim bait that's got a treble hook in the belly of it, it's a treble hook. So there's three different hooks. I'll grab my pliers and bend one straight out so that it's perpendicular to the shank. So it's almost a 90-degree angle in line with the shank. And then the remaining two hooks, I explain this perfectly in this video coming out, I'll pinch together and almost make it like a frog hook. So if you look at a treble hook, that's 3 equal spaces in between the hook points. I like bending those remaining 2 closer together. What this does is it creates a larger gap in the hook, and you don't lose fish on it. But that hook that I straighten out, not only does the mag draft have a magnet in the belly of it, but that hook I straighten out, I stick it straight up the belly of it, and it helps it hold it just that much better. So you got the magnet holding it, and you got that straight hook holding it inside the belly of the bait. That way you could skip it across the gnarliest, docks or whatever it is, or make those really long casts. And when you make those long casts, there's a huge splash and there's impact on the surface. A lot of times you'll knock that treble hook out, and when your treble hook's just dangling there or your bait's fouled up, you just screwed up the best cast you had all day. And that seems like it happens on those types of casts, but just having that treble hook secure in there and those hook points bent in gives it more gap. You don't lose fish on that.
All right, cool stuff coming on the YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
All right,
Yep.
we'll get to see that. All right. Nick wants to know, what type of hook set do you recommend for different types of swim baits?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the mag draft freestyle, when I have it on that 7-aught Trokar swim blade, it's basically a swimming Texas rig. And man, I always and with both, or any swim bait really, we're dealing with really big fish, and we want good hook penetration. And I reel left-handed, so I keep this in my mind at all times when I'm casting. And if that big 6-pounder, I know it's gonna catapult me up in the standings, I have to have that fish. It needs to come to the boat. So hook sets are very important. I always have like 80 or 90% of my weight on my right foot. So no matter which way I'm controlling the trolling motor, I'll either have 90% of my weight on the trolling motor or on the carpet here. But as I reel left-handed, I'm just reeling in, and my rod tip is low, 10 o'clock or so, and I'm reeling, and I get that giant bite. Boom! I'll transfer all that weight from my right foot into my left, and 100% of my weight will be on my left foot, and almost be on one foot almost. And so all that weight transfers, through me, through my rod, into my line, into that bait, and I'll just get all that leverage into me. But nothing's real violent. It's never slackline violent. You always want to control that line that you're taking up. So all that weight I have back on my left foot, my rod just loads up real nice, and I got to think about keep reeling, keep those hook points coming to the boat. And since we're fishing 25-pound test line, I'm gonna boat flip every single one of those. Like the other day, I caught an 8-pounder and boat flipped it. So just hit them hard, hit them hard, but not violent, slack line and all that. Just keep in mind where all your weight is and just transfer your weight, through your body, into your rod, through your line. Keep those hook points coming, and a lot of times we'll boat flip them. I get so nervous when I see guys that have big fish on, like when they're punching and when they're swim baiting, and they're like fighting them on the side of the boat. I'm like, dude, you're gonna lose that fish, and they do a lot,
That's how it is with the crappie.
Yeah, right.
Really?
You jammed that crappie with a 12-foot rod, and Sukup was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "It's a 2.5-pound crappie. I don't want to lose it." And he's like, "No." He goes, "You get it.
Yep.
You get its momentum headed, and you do not
Bring 'em.
stop."
Yep.
So now when I set the hook, I got that. It's just like bent over in the water. You just, and you just keep them coming, then they pop out of the water into the boat. Otherwise, they thrash around the side of the boat and they get off on the crappie.
Same thing. And you're taking me next week, by the way. We're gonna set that up. But no, that's a big deal. Don't sit there and fight them on the boat, around the boat. That's when you lose them. They'll shake, and you got less line out when you're fighting them on the side of the boat, when you're punching, when you're flipping, when you're throwing a big swim bait. That's big line. Line nowadays is so strong, and if you got a good knot, you trust your equipment. You have to trust your equipment, and just swing them in.
Biggest one you flip? What's the biggest one you boat flipped?
I've boat flipped on a swim bait. Yeah, 8s and 9s. 8s and 9s. Yeah.
How many have you broken off trying to boat flip?
Dude, almost
Very
never.
few.
Yeah, never. I don't think I ever have.
What's the biggest one you boat flipped, Mark?
Dude, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's one of those things.
6 pounds.
Yeah.
You boat flipped a 6-pounder?
Yeah. Back in my younger days.
On a Carolina rig?
Oh,
yeah.
The weight's on the rod.
Yeah. Just get it. Let's get in there, man.
That's the way to do it. I mean, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you have less line out when they're thrashing at the side of the boat, so there's no give. I mean, we're talking heavy line, heavy rods. Keep them coming. And, when you boat flip, and just take care of it and make sure you're not.
Hey, there was actually a period of time that when you did hook up with a big fish, you didn't run all over the boat and you didn't take 15 minutes to get it in.
Yeah.
I mean, watch some of those old films.
Oh, yeah.
It's hook up, get it in the boat.
Slow, yeah.
You don't work it for 3, 4, 5 minutes.
I guess
or
my
whatever.
friends
Sports
that
come a
I
long
fish
way.
with that fight the fish the most lose the most.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yep.
Would you agree?
I absolutely agree.
Talk to Harold
I'm
Allen
not a
about
fan.
that.
I'm not a fan of fighting around the boat. I mean,
Unless it's a spinning rod.
Yeah.
Spinning rod's different, but you're talking about power fishing technique.
That's it, power fishing. Because again, the closer they are to the boat, the less stretch and the less give you have
Even a
around the boat.
crankbait.
Yeah.
Hey,
right.
I would like to go back and look at some film on Tommy Biffle and see what he does.
Well, we've watched him.
He's boat flipped his whole career, hasn't he? Yeah.
He doesn't boat flip. He yanks him out of the water on the hook set.
He does.
I know.
Remember that? Because remember his hook
I love
set's
it.
straight
I
up
love
and the
it.
fish
It
is
is.
like out. And then a lot of times it's like a out and then yank.
Yeah.
It's a 2-pronged approach. You yank him out of the water and then into the boat.
Yeah.
And then he looks over at it and you go, didn't miss that one.
Yeah.
Got that one.
And then he takes his time getting down to it at the bottom of the boat.
Yeah.
Then he's like, look, I got 3 more miles of bushes. They're all mine.
Yeah.
Oh, Tommy.
Tommy,
All right.
I think the very first interaction I had with Tommy, I was just starting to date trade at the time. He comes up to me, like at a meeting or something. I was rookie or sophomore, and he's just like, "Where's your girlfriend?" Oh man, I love
Trait's getting on you over here. She's texted me saying, "Why the hell hasn't Chris given any props to Steve Kennedy and his swim bait prowess on the Elite Series?"
Oh, good call on that, Trait. Yeah, that's a great call.
I know.
Okay, so going back to that question,
Well,
I would love to sit down with Steve Kennedy and have a Coca-Cola.
All right. Big Paulie in New York also asked, who's been your influence from a swim bait? Would Steve be one of them?
No.
No?
I remember watching that tournament he won on Clear Lake, and said, there it is. That is it right there. That's it. That's the Huddleston he threw. Oh, look at that. Yep, and the Bastrix.
Disinfect the top of that.
Yep. Well, here, I got my Lysol pocket square here.
There you go. Wipe that off and show it to everybody.
That's the Huddleston there.
Oh, yeah, spin it around. We got it on the camera.
And I remember during that tournament, it must have been 05.
Oh, hang on.
06.
06 is when the Elite Series started. So it was either 06 or 07.
06, 07, yep.
Yeah.
And I was real heavy in the swim bait game there. And I remember the exact spot he was doing that, throwing it on. And I remember thinking, like, man, I'd do it differently. But wow, is he catching them, you know?
Set it over there, I'll wipe it down.
Yeah.
Wow, is he catching them? But I would love to sit down with Steve Kennedy and just about anything, man. He is such a unique angler, and he's been that way his whole career, and he's never going to change. That's what I love about it. The really thing that blew my mind, the swim bait thing, you know, I got my set of rules. He's got his set of rules at swim bait fishing. But really the thing that I like that he does is that white swim jig thing that he does. That is really cool. He like flips a white jig with a full-size white chunk, flips in there, and I think he lets it hit the bottom, and he'll just kind of swim it out. Like, it's a flipping motion, though. It's not cast and, like, fish horizontally. It's like flip in there, let it hit the bottom, and then like swim it up and out, and he gets a lot of big bites doing that.
It's like a dirty white jig too. I mean, it's one that you look at that you're like, this has been on the bottom of the boat for a while.
Yeah, big old skirt on it, big full-size chunk, and just really some cool technique.
All right, a ton of questions. I'm trying to get to as many as I can, so I appreciate everybody being a little bit patient on there. All right, Big Paulie wants to know, when you still want to throw a swim bait, but not the giant one, what do you throw?
Yeah, so Carl touched on this yesterday. I was actually working on the YouTube video, editing it and watching the show. And I completely agree. It's like when he said yesterday that when a guy selects a swim bait and he goes with like a 5 or 6 inch version, and 4 or 5 inch version, and you're thinking like, oh, you know, it's a smaller finessey version of this. Maybe it'll probably get more bites. It's the complete opposite. It really is. So if you don't want to go with the big 8, a 6 inch version is like the perfect tournament size. You'll get the most bites out of it. It's got the little bit bigger profile. It's very appealing to them. But man, when you get down into the 3, 4, and 5 inch like swim baits like this, you don't get a lot of bites on it unless it's a little spark shad or something fishing smallmouth on the bottom with a jig head. But this type of swim bait fishing, when they're feeding up, man, you don't want to go under 6 inches. You really don't. The Bastrix, remember the Bastrix paddle tail craze? There's one in that shadow box there. The 6 inch version was the best size in that whole in that category of paddle tail fishing, and it was hard to get bites unless you're throwing an A-rig on the 4s and the 5s. That 6 inch was just a perfect kind of size for largemouth bass, for 3 and 4 pounders.
All right. A lot of people want to know if you boil the tails.
So that's another thing I addressed in that video. One of the best ways to store swim baits, hands down, is in the original packaging. Unless it's the Bastrix, they just come in a package and they're all stacked up on each other. That's why like 1 out of every 3 works and the other 2 don't. Storing your swim baits is a very, very, if you want to get that camera back on, Mark, it's a really good point. These blister packs like this on some of these swim baits, they build them that way and they mold the packs that way for a reason, and that's to protect that tail. And that's the biggest key. When that water moves over the over the side of that body and it hits that boot tail, that's what gives it the action. Now when that disappears, when you start to store your swim baits on top of each other in a giant box, there's nothing worse than you're on a hot swim bait bite and you pick up the swim bait that's been in that box for a while. There's nothing worse than a tail that looks like that. It's junk. Throw it away. So the only way to combat that is to boil the tails. And in my opinion, in my experiences, whenever you boil the tail, it's never the same. It always weakens the molecules or whatever it is in the plastic here, and it's always just softer. And in my opinion, especially the Mag Draft, it's a little bit stiffer plastic, and it enables that bait to really vibrate and move underwater. So one of the biggest tips I could give you is keep the original packaging in these plastic blister packs, and when you're done fishing a Mag Draft, cut it off and literally put it right back in the package, and that is the best way to store them. Do not stack them on top of each other, because the next time you need it, it'll be like that, or the tail will be flattened out, and it's useless. It's literally useless. So keep the original packaging. They package them that way, for a reason.
Very cool. Tyler in College Station, he wanted to know when was the last time that we talked to Harold Allen. I actually talked to him at the Classic.
How's he doing?
He's doing good.
Good.
Still catching a bunch of crappie. That's his big thing, man. Catching
the whole time. He say if he figured this, last time I saw him was when the elites were there.
Yeah.
We said he never bass fished if he knew that this crappie thing existed.
Yeah.
Making a lot of money.
Yep.
Imagine getting him out there with a pontoon boat once it's legal, full of bachelorette party out there over a brush pile. Harold putting the minnows on, about 90 degrees out.
I like Harold.
Little East Texas country music playing on the pontoon.
Yeah. All right, let's see here.
Keep the questions coming. I love it.
I mean, there's a zillion of them. I'm going through them here. Boil, a lot of boil on here. Okay, Colton in Texas wants to know, enough about the Swimbaits.
Yeah.
What's your favorite flipping setup?
Oh, yeah. Man, I'm a jig guy. I love fishing a jig. My perfect setup is going to be 7.6 bunker buster rods, a destroyer rod, kind of moderate, kind of parabolic. Love a parabolic action when I'm flipping. I could be real accurate with it. So 7.6 flipping stick. I'm doing the braid to fluorocarbon thing when it comes to flipping nowadays. I've got so much confidence in that FG knot. I mean, you could winch a boat in on the trailer with that knot. So like a 50-pound Seaguar smackdown braid, super soft. You could be real accurate and quiet with it. And then just a short leader. I like a 25-pound test Seaguar Tatsu leader, and it's real soft. It's supple. It goes through the guides real nice. And just a half-ounce jig, man. I mean, just a half-ounce. Santone makes one called a rattling jig, and it's got a rattle on it. It's got the shape of the head, though, is the real key. It's got a real flat chin to it, and it's kind of one of those triangular-shaped heads, but it's real smooth-looking. I've got more big fish on that thing, just flipping it to isolated cover. And that's the biggest thing about jig fishing is having confidence in it and pulling up to that log and slowing your trolling motor down and not making a big splash on that log or that overhanging tree or lay down or whatever it is. Just pitch it in there real smooth, a minimal splash, and just like a chunk style trailer, any type of chunk. I like flat. I like it gives that jig a nice gliding motion. And let it sink on controlled slack in 3 to 4 feet of water or whatever it is. Let it hit the bottom, pop it once, and boom, that's when your bite will occur. And then with that braided fluorocarbon setup, the hook set's really easy. It's just lean into it just like that. The hook's penetrated. There's no stretch in that line, and catching them on a jig or hooking them on a jig, I mean, they don't come off. 99 out of 100 times you're gonna land that fish. So I'm a jig guy. Love flipping a jig, and I know a lot of guys, do the beaver thing and do the rage crawl thing or whatever it is, but I just like an old school chunk trailer, matching color, black and blue on a Santone rattling jig, half ounce.
All right, maybe the toughest question of the day. Ben wants to know what professional bass fisherman would have to play or be the best person to play Joe Exotic in a movie?
That's easy, man. And the reason, you already know what the reason why I say that, because this angler posted about Joe Exotic, and I think he even did a little photoshopping, but no doubt Seth Feider. I mean, he's already got the hair. He's kind of got that attitude, it's this is my world. This is the way I do things. I'm never going to change.
You could get into trouble answered that. I could go like 9 or 10 different ways on this.
Yeah, I only said that because he made fun of himself and he put his face on his body or something like that, and he actually recommended watching the documentary. And what's funny is kind of my intellectual friends, they, and my wife included, she couldn't stand to watch it. She got through a couple episodes, maybe half an episode, and she just couldn't watch it. But for a California hillbilly like me, I loved it, man. I love that documentary.
I watched it in one sitting.
It was good.
Yeah.
I sat down and didn't stand up till it was done.
No, it was good. That's why I looked at that GW Exotic Ranch on the way here, man. I really want to stop by on the way back. If I come in late.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I did see on social media somebody made a comparison to Jason Quinn.
Just with the
that's awesome.
jewelry and
the
look and all that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's a good one. That's a real good one.
We'll see. All right, let's see here. Ben in Minnesota also, I don't know if it's the same Ben, is really interested on, you remember we had the question about you see a big fish, you try to get it fired up, it doesn't bite, and then you come back to it. If you come back to it, or would you try to throw a follow-up bait rather than the same bait? What would you do?
Yeah, so I'm either, man, that's a giant, that's an 8-pounder that followed my swim bait out on that second dock of 12 docks. As I approach it the following day, let's say that was practice, as I approach it the following day, if the wind starts blowing into it, I come back the second day, the wind's blowing into it, the conditions have changed, so I may make the exact same cast with that exact same swim bait and hope to get her to bite. But more times than not, I'm going to use the exact same bait. A lot of times it's that 8-inch mag or the 6-inch mag. And again, I'll just, instead of casting to the side of the dock or that same angle I casted, just go into, go towards the bank, into the docks, and cast out towards the lake. Just change the angle up. Just something has to change because she didn't bite the first time around. Something's got to change. Of course, the day changes. It's 24 hours later, whatever it is. But conditions have to change. Angles have to change. It all really depends on the conditions. But or I'll just go with, I'm a California guy. I love throwing a Neko rig. Nico. I say Neko. And that's basically just a nail weighted Senko, nail weighted straight tail worm. Any straight tailed worm, 5-6 inches, throw it on 8 and 10 pound fluorocarbon to braid, finesse outfit, spinning rod, and just any confidence down bait, and it's you know where she is, where her home is. That big bait, revealed that. It's up to you to get the bite now. So I'll either change the angle or switch it up. Either, instead of throwing something that big, I'm going to throw something that big at her and just really shake it there and just try to get her to bite. Almost like I'm bed fishing without seeing it. Just know where she lives.
All right. Another people want to know, do you do the kayak thing?
No. No. Man, that's getting real big, isn't it? Why are you laughing? Do you do it?
It's just interesting. It's a question we get all the time now.
Yeah. No. Man, those are some real tricky kayaks too that they have live wells and rod holders and fins and all that stuff. I grew up fishing out of an 8-foot pontoon boat. I used to strap it to the top of my 91 Ford Taurus station wagon, strap it to the top, a couple rods in the back. Drive to high school with it, and then after 6th period math class or whatever, I'd bolt out to the lake. So I know what that whole gig's all about. It's a lot of work, preparation, and hooking it up and strapping it down and getting ready and launching, all that. It's a lot of work. It really is a lot of work, but it's worth it though. Once you're out there, it's super peaceful. It's quiet. You're able to get in those backwaters that us bass boat guys can't get into. And now there's a whole lot of competition there too. I got a lot of kayak buddies, a lot of kayak friends, and they were saying, man, it's pretty crazy. It's turned into like professional fishing. Like they were saying, oh, and this so-and-so is like the KVD of kayak fishing. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
It's a subculture of a subculture.
It is. It
really is. All right, Steve in Michigan wants to know, what were you using when you caught the giant smallmouth on St. Clair last year?
Yeah. Oh, man.
By the way, he said he met you and you're a cool guy.
Oh, cool. Right on. Yeah, appreciate it. A Swimbait, 3-inch spark shad. That's one of my favorites. The difference between like a spark shad Swimbait and let's say a mag draft is a spark shad's more subtle. I think everyone's kind of familiar with like the Kitech Swimbait. Every bait company makes one like it, but a spark shad's different. It really is. The shape of the tail is different. It's got what's called a perpendicular tail, where it gets real thin and then it's like a T-shaped tail. And the Kitechs and all the other copies are it's just a real subtle wag to it. It's got ribs on it. But that 3-inch spark shad is my money maker when I go up north. I just put it on a little 1/4-ounce ball head. It's got a small hook, like a 2/0 hook on the ball head, and it was just a ledge, a real shallow ledge up on St. Clair, and we caught it on camera. It was awesome. But a big old black smallmouth in that beautiful blue water. I watched it eat it, so I was reeling the swim bait in like 6 feet of water. I could see it and just comes over and crushes it. And we were jockeying for AOI, and I thought if we get on a little roll here, we can make the AOI thing happen. But no, just a small swim bait. Like I said, if I would have thrown something like that in there, she would have bit it as well. But the hookup and the landing ratio is a lot. You're playing with fire when you got the bigger baits and small mouths. So yeah, little 3-inch spark shad in a Huo color, which is all white. Go-to smallmouth rig.
All right. A few more questions here, then we're going to wrap things up. Barry in Missouri wants to know, what is a high percentage area and the time of the year for an 8-inch mag draft on the Ozark Lakes?
Ooh, that's a good question. Ozark Lakes, Lake of the Ozarks, or any of the Ozark Lakes, for the people that don't know, geographically, it's a kind of a mountainous area, and it's a very riverine type lake, like a Table Rock, where it just kind of S-turns, and it's real narrow, and there's a lot of little branches and things. My advice is to always target main points and secondary main points. So obvious stuff, man. Really, really, really obvious stuff. If I go to a brand new lake and I see like locals fishing a particular type of point, like, man, that's just obvious. It's a community hole. That's when I like to be the sneaky guy and pull up with that 8-inch mag draft. As long as there's 4, 5, 6+ pounders that live in the place, I've got a chance at catching those 6+ pounders on the 8-inch mag draft. So the most obvious wind-blown points you could find. So although fish may be on beds right now or getting there, it's a perfect time to target main points. And basically what I'll do is, if you got the dam in a lot of these lakes, obviously the further away from the dam you get, the further along the spawn you're in. So I like to run the whole lake almost and kind of run from the spawn. And I like to stay in front of the spawn when I'm using a swim bait. Like down in Texas right now, we're still in pre-spawn. There's a couple fish getting up on beds. You guys are definitely in pre-spawn here. You got to be real careful. Once they get to the beds, once they start spawning on the beds, that swim bait bite goes away. So you got to find where in the lake they're really keying in on feeding. We just pulled up. That big female just pulled up to that main point, just pulled up to that secondary point. She is feeding in a pre-spawn mode. As soon as that full moon comes around or the weather gets nice for 2 days, they get off of this and they go to spawning. So we're always running from that. So we'll start at the top of the lake away from the dam. We'll run that lake all the way down, fish, a quarter of the way down, halfway down mid-lake, and then 3/4 of the way within side of the dam. And at some point on those main points, we're going to find some active pre-spawn feeding fish with that mag draft, and that's what we're targeting feeding pre-spawn fish that don't have spawning on their mind yet. They're feeding. They want something that big in their belly before they go to spawn.
All right, Lane in New Jersey wants to know, what lake does Chris not want to go head-to-head with Trade on?
Great question, Lane. Any of the ones she grew up on, like a Ray Roberts, for example, over there, she's good there. Louisville, she's good there. I don't have a lot of experience on our Dallas-Fort Worth lakes. I don't. She's got more experience than me in those areas. So any of those lakes in the DFW area, Eagle Mountain Lake, she knows that place really well. And then as far as baits go, like Craig Taylor up there in Oneida, she's really good at finesse swim baiting and then spy baiting. She's got the patience. She got the finesse for it. I'm a great finesse fisherman. I feel like I love doing it and I'm comfortable with it. But whenever, there's clear water, finesse presentation, especially a spy bait, she's really good at that. So any of those lakes.
What was the lake that they had the bush shootout on? Was that Eagle
Mountain?
Is that what it was?
Yeah, Eagle Mountain.
It's right there by the conference center or whatever. The Gaylord Hotel.
I don't know about that.
No?
That would ring a bell. No, I don't. So right there off of 820. Eagle Mountain.
I think that's what it
was.
Okay.
Yeah. So is a bush shootout the same thing as the E50s? No.
That was a special event.
Like the winners or something.
Didn't Ish win that?
I don't know.
I think Ish won it.
Okay.
But it was called the Bush Shootout. It was a special event. There were only like 12 guys.
$250,000 for first.
Something I don't remember.
Yeah. It was like everyone who had won that year or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was a special event.
Huh.
I don't know. What was it? 11 years ago?
Yeah.
Something like
They
that.
used to have the majors and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
It's before
a lot
your
of
time.
opportunity. Yeah, before my time.
Yeah,
A lot of
it's before your
opportunity to
time.
make money. Yep. Right now, we've got zero opportunity to make money on the water unless you're guiding.
Nah, dude, there's some underground stuff going on.
Oh, really? Some underground tournaments?
No.
No, there is. There is. You got 4 or 5 guys. Everything's good.
Like high stakes fishing?
Like the Wednesday night jackpots got canceled, stuff like that. Hey, you still want to go? Okay, everyone gets in the water. $300-400 a boat.
Well, there's some high stake poker games.
Oh, yeah.
taking place
We talked
somewhere.
about this last time.
I mean,
please coordinate and high stakes fishing. That would be awesome.
Not like high
No,
stakes, but
still.
like to make it worth your while. You know what I mean? Like if it's going on.
Any get together is high stakes, high risk right now.
Yeah, well, it's
Current
not no
state.
get together. I mean, it's literally, hey, we start fishing at
Yeah.
6, so you're all putting in a different ramp, showing up the different time, and then
Right.
afterwards you're sending you're meeting up and sending a check to the guy. It's like the ones I'm doing are like buddies, guys
Yeah.
that they trust with all digitals that are the same, and you're showing your best 5 in a picture, so there's no gathering whatsoever.
And I've been getting all kinds of messages on social media, and everyone's saying, man, they miss Bass Live, they need some Bass Live, and this and that, and that's why we're trying to. And like I walked in this morning, you were working on a YouTube video. Watching YouTube videos is about the best you can get as far as getting your fill of fishing in that digital space. So if any of the Elite Series guys or any other professional bass fishermen out there listening, I encourage you guys to bump up your presence, because the fans want to see it, they want to hear it, just like this show. They love it, they love the content, so keep it coming.
We've been going for 2 hours.
Yeah, it's good
It's the
stuff.
longest show ever.
I think so. But how often do you get him in studio
I
with
appreciate it, guys.
the situation like this?
No,
It's
I
good
love it.
stuff.
Especially in the spring.
Yeah. All right. Big Paulie wants to know, have you made more money fishing deep or with big swim baits?
Ooh, Big Paulie. Big Paulie, I'm going to send you asked some good questions. I forget the guy's name that I was sending this stuff to, but you're going to get the big.
It was about the smallmouth. The first question was
Virginia. The guy in
Big
Virginia.
Paulie, you've been asking some good questions, and I'll send you the 8-inch mag draft here out of my personal collection. I've won more money, I think, fishing deep. We had a good classic a couple times with the big swim bait, but I think fishing deep.
Swim bait things, you've always been a swim bait guy, but this thing is kind of a new anomaly that came out in the past 2 years.
That's
with
exactly.
you. I mean, Chris throws a swim bait, but then really the Knoxville Classic, and then you had a couple tournaments there, and it all of a sudden.
It's all scheduling. Like, it's always in my mind. Like, I want to throw it, but it never works out.
But what percentage from 2012 to 2016 was questions to you about swim baits?
None. None.
It was finesse fishing, right?
It was.
It was finesse fishing with you. Then that happened now from 2017 through now. What percentage of it is swim baiting?
All of it. Yeah.
I mean, people used to be a flipper, a puncher, covering water, jerk bait. I mean, everything was jerk baiting.
Yeah. And out of
West Coast stuff,
it is, and I enjoy all that stuff. But my passion is absolutely swim bait fishing. It's just where I grew up, and like you said, from 2012 to 16, the schedule really didn't align with that type of fishing. It just happens that the last few years it really has been. So the schedule aligned with that. So something I'm passionate about, and I'll never ever get tired of it. That's for sure.
All right, TJ in North Carolina wants to know, the Dark Sleeper has such a realistic swimming action. Why is it only advertised as a deep water swim bait?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. A Dark Sleeper is basically it's like a swim bait jig. You fish it along the bottom. It's got a flat chin to it. It's basically a ball of lead, or an oval-shaped ball of lead, molded plastic around it. That's just like the perfect fish, the anatomy of a bottom-dwelling fish. And it works really good when you're just fishing it like a jig and fishing it like a jig. It does work good in the deeper water, like you mentioned, but man, the 3/4 ounce skipped underneath docks in 5 to 6 feet of water. Excellent. That might be the next YouTube topic we'll talk about, and that's fishing a so-called deep swim bait like that Dark Sleeper, and we'll fish it super shallow. So maybe we'll talk about that.
All right, Mike wants to know, would you be okay if they had to get the tournaments in, having tournaments without crowds?
Yeah, I think I'd be okay with that. I think I would. At this point, we're a few weeks into this thing, and I'm just like itching to get out and compete. Really, fishing. We could all go fishing at any point as long as we stay safe, do it safe, fish smart. Clean up after ourselves and that. But like the competing side of it, I think that's what everyone's really missing and starving for. But I'd be okay with that. No crowds, maybe bump up the coverage in some way, shape, or form.
All right. Russ wants to know if you broke out the big spoon since last year.
Oh, dude, at the Classic, right? So at Guntersville last year, we almost won the tournament. And in the last 10 minutes, we were catching big ones and hooking them and foul hooking them, and they were hitting it. So I broke out that big, giant 8-inch spoon. Like during the Classic this year, like, what a dummy, right? They only bite it in the summertime, and I know that. Everyone knows that, but I did it anyways. I broke it out.
In the tournament?
No, not in the tournament. During practice, but I spent too much time trying to find it in practice, just thinking like, hey, maybe they're on it. This is like the special thing where I'm trying to get payback on this lake. But I did throw the bridge pilings I was fishing. There were some big ones around it, and I was catching them on swim bait around the bridge pilings. I did, pitch it up to the side of those bridge pilings and let it flutter down the sides of them. I figured my best shot at catching them on that giant spoon was just dropping it down the sides of those bridge pilings.
Did you get any bites?
No, I caught white bass. That's all I caught.
On that giant spoon?
On the giant spoon, yeah. And they were eating it. I was hooking them around the face. I mean, they were actually getting after it. But the beauty of that flutter spoon, it works so good when the water temperatures are like 75 degrees plus. Just it has something to do with that big fluttering, just side to side dying action when the water's hot. It just gets them going. So.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll ask him. Would you ever fish a one-on-one versus trait? Like seriously, not like a friendly, like out for blood.
Bring it. Just don't have it down on one of her lakes down there. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And she's been working hard these last few days as well. She's got her pink rod line through, Eagle Claw and she's still in that Walmart space. Every time you go through Walmart, and they're about to do big reorders. So every time you walk down Walmart, and you're looking
she's
for.
She's probably got to sell a bunch of rods during this because of the people that are fishing. They could get their family out.
That's
and
exactly
like
it.
That's the rod that you want.
Yep, that's exactly it. The whole
pink one.
Yep, pink rods.
Which one do you want? I want the pink one, Dad.
Yeah.
Or the wife trying to get it. I'm not going to go fishing. Well, look, I got you your own rod.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, now I'll go.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
All right, back to the swim bait. I'm just curious on this. What about outside grass lines?
Perfect. And that's where the freestyle comes in. That Texas rigged belly weight style. Excellent. Now grass lines too. Like most of the all grass lines aren't the same. We're always looking for irregularities, and just a wall of grass. You can't spend all day just going down it. You have to look for the irregularities, whether it be just.
You
can.
I beg to differ. You can spend all day.
Dude, that's the worst place to do it at, man, because the walls are so deep and they're so vast. So you're always looking for points in the grass or indentations or where the grass gets broken up just a little bit, and that's where your bait's going to hang out, and that's where the big bass like to feed. I
will prove you wrong on that.
It's easy. It is easy to get sucked into that and just, the grass line's so pretty. Let's just keep going and keep going. It'll happen. Keep going.
If at some point you say, I'm going to give it one more mile, you're screwed.
How many miles did you give it, Matt?
I gave it all the miles.
Yeah. Valuable lesson learned, though. Valuable lesson. All right. Steven wants to know, will you talk about the straw trick using the Nico rig?
Yeah, that's a good. Is he from California?
Doesn't say.
Okay. The drinking straw trick when it comes to Neko rigging, this is a really good one. But there's so many different. Well, it can't be from California because now California's got the paper straws. But when I travel around, I always pay attention, like at gas stations and fast food places. Like I always pay attention to the straws they use, particularly in the diameter and the thickness of the straws they use. And basically, we all know, just O-rings, just regular O-rings are used to seal connections and fittings in other industries. But, everyone throws a 5-inch Senko, and they use that wacky rig tool with a black O-ring. Well, I like to take it one step further and having my bait, my finesse worm, my 5-inch straight tail finesse worm that happens to be slimmer than the Senko, you can't get an O-ring around some of those thinner Neko rig straight tail baits. So I basically pay attention to straws and just look for different diameters and collect different diameters of straws and just cut them up in little eighth inch sections, and boom, there's my O-ring. That's my keeper. And it does two things. It lasts longer than an O-ring, in my opinion. It's just super sturdy plastic, and it's clear, and it just disappears in the worm. So on those really, really clear waters like those Table Rocks and some of those other lakes we fish, and a Neko rig is awesome up north. Man, using that straw is that's the deal.
Yeah.
And when it slides up and down the line, it slides super nice, and it doesn't hang up because it's rubber and grippy. So yes, especially with those smaller finesse style worms, straight tail worms, those 4 and 5 inch worms, you can't beat it.
Yeah. Check out Brahms.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a pink straw, is it not?
They have clear ones.
Okay.
Now.
Very cool. Okay.
Because that thickness of that
the
straw.
milkshakes. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's good stuff.
You just have to go through the drive-through a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't go inside.
You can't go
now.
in and look at the straws.
Well,
You got to go through the drive-through a lot.
Not necessarily, because some of the Brahms now are markets.
Oh, yeah.
So they're allowing people to go in because they have groceries.
Did Brahms originate in Oklahoma?
Yeah.
It did, right? So we got some
Drew Brahm is the son.
Okay.
And then I forget the founding father.
It's like a small dairy / ice cream place, and they have burgers and stuff like that.
Good burger.
Yeah. But yeah, someone was telling me when around DFW, when all the milk and things got ravaged and sold out, like Brahms was the place.
The main farm distribution site is in Tuttle, which is a super, super small town about, 40 minutes from here. But they will not put a Brahms store that is not at least a driving distance to and from for the drivers to deliver all of the products fresh.
Ah, gotcha.
They have no other distribution, so it's kind of a unique thing. But yeah,
It's just around here then.
Texas.
Yeah.
I wonder if they sell their expired meat to the GW Exotic Ranch.
No, that was Walmart.
No, yeah.
And then used it in their pizza place or whatever.
Yeah,
That was disgusting. Jeez. All right, man. Just an incredible 2 hours. We went
Appreciate it, guys.
over 2 hours, and I remember the first time we ever interviewed you. It seems like we talk about it all the time.
Little guy, man.
Man, you were green, and you knew what you wanted to do, and you made that big, bold move to leave the job that you had, and look at you now, Chris.
That's awesome. I appreciate it, guys, for giving me the opportunity from the start. So.
All right. Matt, anything else?
Nope. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. It's good stuff here, Chris.
Yeah.
Learned some stuff.
Yeah, good.
I've been doing a lot of stuff wrong for a lot of years.
All right, folks, I want to thank everybody for hanging with us for a couple of hours. And who did we give this stuff away to? Scott in Virginia? Or who was it?
Big Paulie.
Big Paulie got the big bait.
Yeah, so Big Paulie needs to text his info to Mark. Or not text, email.
To me or to Chris?
Send it to me. I'll send them out. Yep.
What's your email
address? Does Chris want to give out his email address?
Or Twitter? What? Send it to me. I don't care. I'll forward it on.
Or send him a DM on your Instagram.
That's cool. Yeah.
If they don't have Instagram, look, we're going to simplify this.
Yeah.
Send me an email, Big Paulie, with your ship to information. Mark@basson.com. I will pass it on to Chris.
And who was the smallmouth question?
I think it was Scott in Virginia.
Yeah. Sounds right.
Yeah. So
Cool.
Scott in Virginia, send me your mail to info. I'll pass it on to Chris, and Chris will get that to you. So great show, everybody. The next 2 days are going to be awesome. Also, KVD tomorrow, Gerald Swindle on Friday. We're going to keep jamming out the shows. So everybody be safe out there. That's it. We're out of here.